G'day, guys. What's going on? Evets is still working out his scenery, but that's okay. That's all right. I'm obviously in a different scenery. Welcome, everyone, to the Freshly Awoken podcast. Hopefully, we're having some technical difficulties, so hopefully the net's actually okay. Anyway, I'm joined by a few people today and someone who's missing, but will come soon. Let me introduce the guest. So first of all, Misterevets. You've seen him before. You know him. He's here again. We got Foxy Roxy down in the corner there. How you going, Roxy?
Good. How are you guys?
Very nice. Very nice. Very good.
Good.
And then we've got Porkins over here. Can you guys see Porkins?
I'm waving.
He's waving. He's got that scowl, that ever-present scowl on his face. But yeah, we're still waiting for Woke. He had a bit of car trouble, a little bit of maybe battery issues. We're not sure, but hopefully he's going to be here within the next 5 minutes. Just let me know in the chat if we're getting some lag, guys. I mean, it's not much I can do about it anyway. Okay, but today the topic of the podcast is Australia versus USA. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a little bit mean. We're not actually like versing each other in anything proper.
What?
But
I'm out.
you know, sport, I guess, every now and then. But we thought we'd talk about maybe some differences in the culture and some differences in the way we live, and hopefully you guys find it interesting. But let's hand over to the guests to do a little bit of an intro of who they are, maybe a little bit of what they do, where they're from. I'm going to start with Roxy because she's the newest one. Go for it, Roxy.
That's what I figured. Okay. Well, I'm Roxy. Hi. I am originally born and raised in New York. I was born in the city, and then I was raised out in the suburbs of Long Island. I lived there for all of my life up until 3 years ago, so October of 2016, when I moved to Columbus, Mississippi, for a job opportunity. And that was a huge culture shock for me, which I was super excited when Fresh asked me to be a part of the podcast, because I felt like there were a lot of things, I guess, relative to culture and relative to just my experiences in the last 3 years alone, that would make this kind of exciting. So I am a head volleyball coach at a university here. This is my first head coaching job, so it's been a whirlwind. But yeah, I was a student athlete at a college up in Buffalo, New York, where I graduated and got my bachelor's degree. As Mr. Evans said last time, nothing fancy, just a bachelor's in communications. But yeah, that pretty much brings me to where I am today. So I
Very
guess
nice.
we'll get to know more of me as we go along.
Definitely. Just before we intro Porkins and Evets again, do you guys want to, I can do a restart because like we're like dropping like 50% of our frames. Would you like to do a restart to improve the live quality, or should we just bank on the recording? Yes.
I'm fine with restarting. I think it'll help, but
yeah,
for sure.
All right, we might give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. All right, guys, we'll be back in like 3 minutes. We'll do a quick restart and then see if we can work out the technical bugs. Be right back. BRB.
Hey, how you going? Sorry I'm late, everybody, and sorry for the technical difficulties. Yeah, I was like grabbing some beers with some mates and having dinner in Subiaco, and my car wouldn't start. So that's the long and the short of it. But yeah, this has happened a couple of times where my like battery has died, and this is the last time that it will happen.
What do you mean it's the last time?
It died, like it proper died this time.
Oh, right.
Not like, just need a little jump, you know? But yeah, I also had a huge party last night. So I was, my mind's a little bit scattered. And I was like, I called RAC and I was like, yeah, sweet, I'm waiting for RAC to get here. They'll fix my car and I'll get on my way. And then Fresh pointed out to me that I have jumper leads in my car and I should just go and ask someone to like jump my car, and I just didn't think about it. I was like sitting in my car like freaking out that I was going to miss the podcast. But yeah, anyway, RSC came, new battery bought, cost me so much money. So sad. But anyway, that's what we were doing. That's what I was doing instead of being on the podcast. But yeah, so we were doing intros, right? Roxy,
yeah.
We got through Roxy's intro. You told us a little bit about yourself, Fred?
Yes, just a little bit. And I figure get to know me a little bit more as we go along.
Yeah, nice.
Mhm.
And obviously, we all know Misterevets, repeat offender. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us a little
think.
bit about yourself and what you're doing? For those of you that haven't met you before.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So I have lived in Michigan my whole life, just like in different areas of Michigan. Went to school, got a bachelor's degree in philosophy, and now I live in the same town that I went to college in, and I've got a whiny dog next to me. And I mean, that's basically all I have.
Nice, very nice. And last but not least, we have the great Porkins. I don't know why I said the big. Sorry.
What a bad dude.
I was like, where is he going with this?
Yeah, sorry. The great. I meant to say the great Porkins. Which most of the people, if you were around Fresh's stream,
Oh
then
my gosh.
you know him pretty well. But do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself,
I thought you were
Porkins?
going to call me the wide Porkins.
Yeah, no, that's what you would do.
Yeah, my name's Porkins. I don't stream, and I don't intend on it, but I kind of know Fresh and work IRL.
Sure do.
And I spent a couple of hours working on my hair and makeup tonight, and then they didn't put me live. So
Oh, rude. We looked at you.
Hey,
We
well-
took one look at you, and we were like, "Oh, mate, too
Or
white."
Fresh didn't want to be associated with my face, and that's okay. So.
Hawkins told me he didn't have a camera for like 2 weeks, and then like 1 hour before this is like, oh wait, I do have a camera. Like too late,
Oh,
man.
goodness.
Too late.
Yeah. So, does everybody have their drinks?
Oh yes, the beer review, man. I actually forgot
beer
about it, but I'm
review.
actually so
I do.
thirsty.
Beer review.
Beer review.
I'm lame and I'm
Mr.
skipping out
Cox.
on it. I drank too
Skipping
much
out.
last night.
Nice. Yeah, I actually drank so much last night, and I actually thought about skipping out on it, but
Oh,
Your
you-
last night was an extra 12 hours longer ago than mine.
That's true.
That's true. That is so true. But yeah, do we want to intro our drinks? Roxy, have you got something?
I do actually. I ended up getting. I'll go first, I guess. just
Yeah,
to
go for it.
intro.
Yeah.
I got a coffee milk stout, which I do like stout beers. And so
Sounds so
this
good.
is by Wiseacre Brewing Company, which is out of Memphis, Tennessee. I've never tried it before, but I recently went to a restaurant where they had pretty much a create your own 6-pack. And this was on the shelf, but I was really nervous to try it. But I ended up buying a 6-pack last night, so hopefully it's good. Otherwise, I'll be giving them away for free. But this is what the can looks like.
Ooh,
Gotta get up
that's
to
very
get
fancy.
down.
I like
I'm
that.
having dog
Yes.
issues. I'll be back in
I
just
like
a
it.
second.
No problem.
No
Dog
worries. Okay.
issues.
And so yeah, coffee milk stout is what I have this
Sweet.
morning.
Damn, that sounds actually, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Coffee milk stout, but it sounds
Well,
delicious.
I was like 8 a.m. What can I do? Because I'm not opposed to day drinking,
Yeah.
but maybe not the hard stuff at 8 a.m. So
Oh,
here we
yeah,
are.
definitely.
Yeah,
Nice.
definitely.
Sounds good.
I'm excited.
Fresh, what have you got?
I went with, and I think you'll be excited about this one, the Beer Farm. Oh, flip! I swear I get a green one every time. It doesn't work, but it's an IPL. It's an India Pale Lager, so not an IPA.
Once again, a
Okay.
beer I've never heard of.
Yeah, weird, but I really like this brown Beer Farm, and I like the IPA when I did it. So give that IPL a go. You know.
Nice.
Nice.
Porkins, what do you got? I just realized I don't have my beer here. I'm gonna go grab it from the fridge.
That's right.
Porkins, what do you got for us?
What you got,
I
Porkins?
got the Colonial Brewing Company Small Ale.
Oh, well
the,
done. Yeah, nice.
In my opinion, the best kind of mid-strength going around. So
Oh, is it really? Okay. You're a big fan. So you've already had this one. That's fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've had it before. Repeat
All right.
offender.
Repeat offender. All right. Good to know. Good to know. Well, I guess until work comes back, we'll
Well-
just. Oh, here we go. All right, work.
Yeah, I'm here.
What
Sorry,
beer?
guys.
What beer?
Man, this is probably the most organized podcast.
Mate, did you just crack your
Right.
beer
Oh,
before us?
100%.
No. It was
Okay.
I heard it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh,
So I'm been eyeing this one off on the shelf at the store. It's called Other Side. It's like a Fremantle. It's a West Australian beer from down in Fremantle. So very local, born and bred. I was like, but I've been eyeing it off on the shelf for ages, and I just haven't got around to trying it yet. But it's called Other Side Anthem, and it's just an IPA, Indian Pale Ale. So I don't know, man. There we go. That's a bit better. But yeah, nice artwork. I don't know. I really like the style, and it's local, so I thought I'd go with it. But yeah, I've been pretty keen to try this for a while. So
Yeah.
and
Nice.
yeah, this is gonna hurt. After how much I drank last night, this is gonna hurt me. But you know,
dude,
doing it for the beer review.
doing it
Gotta
for the
do
beer.
it.
You got to.
go.
You
All
got to.
right. So
All right.
communal crack.
3, 2, 1, crack. Ah,
Ooh,
yes.
nice.
Okay.
That's such a nice sound.
It
Sure
really is.
Oh.
What are we gonna do if somebody brings a bottle one of these days?
I
Right.
mean, Vibe did
Very
last time.
anticlimactic.
Yeah. I
Okay.
feel like a bottle makes just
Yeah,
as
still a
nice
little
as-
bit of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like-
Cool. All right. Well, now that our beers are all introed, let's get into why we're here today. Bit of a chit chat. We were tossing up a few different things. Obviously having Foxy here. Sorry, Roxy here.
Yeah, Foxy's fine.
Foxy or
Foxy's fine.
Roxy?
Cool. Either or. We wanted to take advantage of the fact that she's American because there's a lot of, I don't know, America is just so in the public eye. Especially out I can't say for the rest of the world, but in Australia, like so much of our media coverage and so much of the stuff that we hear about, trends that we pick up are all start from America. So we thought it would be very interesting to just talk a little bit about the differences between Oz and Australia and the USA. And yeah, we put down here culturally, politically, economically, legally, but obviously none of us are experts. So yeah. And you play a sports netball? No.
Netball. They don't have netball in the US, man. We talked about this.
They
Oh,
don't.
we talked about this.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
really? Oh.
Yeah. Have you heard of netball though, Roxy? Do you know what netball
Never.
is?
Not a
see,
day
there
in
you
my
go.
life.
Crazy.
It is.
Believe it.
It is a vicious sport.
It is. We've
Okay.
covered
do you-
netball.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys
we
have already
talked about
talked
this
I'll look it
last
up
time.
after. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like
but no,
basketball.
volleyball.
It's like-
Volleyball for me.
Yeah.
Volleyball.
And obviously we thought about talking about the differences in sports as well. But you play some sports. What sports do you play?
I did. I played volleyball predominantly. I played basketball for like maybe 5 minutes, and then I hated it. So I started to fall in love with volleyball more and more. And for those that don't know, I'm very tall for a female. I'm 6'3", and so I get it all
It's just
the
tall,
time.
period.
Yeah.
Like
Um, So it was just like, oh, you have to play basketball. You have to play basketball. You have to play basketball. And I was just not interested at all. But yes, I started playing volleyball when I was 7th grader. So I was about 13, 14.
Nice.
And I played all the way up through high school, and I got a full scholarship to play in college. So
That's
Wow.
sick.
That is
Yeah.
so cool. Yeah, you guys. I mean, from my everything that we're going to say today is like from our perspective. Obviously, I don't
Sure.
live in the US, so
same, vice versa.
yeah. From my perspective, you guys do sport so huge.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, it's
just,
crazy.
Like
Yeah.
even like down to like the local levels, everything is like just so much more money is put into it than in Australia. Like when we're talking like local levels and stuff like that, it's like in a gym and like there's no tiered
There's
seating. Everybody's
a
just
few
sitting on the
parents
sidelines.
watching, maybe, but like
Few parents, yeah.
nobody else watching.
Yeah.
Nobody watches, nobody cares. But you
Yeah.
and like I don't know. Like, do you have any insight into why that is?
Okay. I think it's just at least for me, for volleyball itself, I think volleyball is a little bit different. And my experience is only in volleyball, so it's a little harder. But sports like football, and maybe Evets can speak more to this. I'm not assuming that he likes football, but if he even has any inkling, I think it's just the time, I guess, aspect that's put into, at least from a volleyball standpoint. You play from the time you're so little, and you play travel volleyball, which is like outside of your regular school season. You just travel to different places and play tougher teams. And there's just honestly, so much money invested on the front end to actually participate in some of these sports that I feel like that's why it's made to be such a big deal when you actually get the chance to compete and play. But I don't know. I mean, I personally am very competitive, like extremely competitive. and my experiences in my, I guess, collegiate career, I think especially contributed to that. And so for me, I'm just competitive in general. But that's what makes it for me so exciting and worth, I guess, making a big to do about.
Yeah. Fair
Um,
enough.
I don't follow the sports ball at all.
The sports.
Okay, then.
Sports ball.
I played soccer when I was younger, or football, either way, but not American football, the one where you kick the ball. But anyway, I played that when I was younger, and that was fun. But I stopped before I got into that, like the travel teams and all that. I stopped in elementary school when I was like 10 or 11, and part of that was just moving around so much. And then I swam for a year competitively, and
Nice.
also moved and went to a school that didn't have a pool, so no more swim team. But I think I'm just taking a stab in the dark here, but I think a couple of the major reasons that like it's as big as it is, especially at the local level, like you were saying, is because a lot of the time, not for everyone, but for a lot of those student athletes, that's the only way that their family can afford to send them to college. So for part of it, I think it's like push and push and push so you can see if you can earn your way into college by doing something else rather than having to pay the full price, because college prices here are so ridiculous, especially now.
Wow.
And I think another part of it is just, I think our country has an addiction to competition. So when we can have these local competitions that can be really intense and everybody can get really excited about them, but there's not actually any violence associated most of the time. Philadelphia is a whole different story. Like Eagles fans are fucking crazy. Sorry.
That's so
but
good.
that's just what I've heard. I haven't actually been there for any games or anything, but
yeah, right.
But like for high schools and colleges and everything, I think it's a way that you can pick something to identify with and then cheer for those people and like try and root them on as they're competing against somebody else. So I think those might be part of the reason, but again, I'm just speculating here.
Yeah.
Probably. And I think,
you go.
No, you go ahead.
Probably like population density as well.
Like Frey said.
I only really just
Yeah.
thought about that. Yeah, like we have like what 22, 21 million in Australia, and you guys are like at like
350
million.
Wow.
Which obviously means that like
Yeah.
when you're getting to like local levels, there's so much more population density around those local areas. So you get more groundswell, you get more support, you get more people attending events and looking for things to entertain them. Yeah.
What I was going to say was actually relative to that with population wise, I think.
Yeah, right.
With all the cities and towns, I mean, there's just so many small towns and small cities that maybe not all of those people, like Evan said, maybe they can't afford to send their kids to college, or maybe there's not an opportunity for them to enjoy like professional sports, like sports on a professional level, like some other areas. So that, ties into the more local, I guess, aspect.
Yeah. Whereas in Australia, we don't get like money until it's like proper pro level sport. There's like almost no money in it, like no money put into it. And so you get this like weird, so like even for example, for Australian Aussie rules football, you've got you have so many tiers, like everybody's still playing it, like kids are playing it, teenagers playing it, there's local sporting events, local teams and whatever, but it's literally just family members that rock up. No one else goes and sees those games. And it's like even up to like Waffle, which is like, so Waffle is like the West Australian Football League, and that's where people like draft the pro teams, like draft picks kind of thing, from. And they, even at Waffle level, you go to Waffle games and there's not like that many people there regularly, and yeah, it's so weird to me. And I love the fact that you guys do everything so big and so crazy.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
We're so limited by our
Elaborate.
population here in everything.
Yeah.
It's probably not, it's not so much even the density, it's just the number of like semi-dense, I guess, cities in the US.
Yeah.
And so, we have like what 6 or 7 like big cities or towns, and all of them have a pro team. Whereas in the US, if you don't have a pro team, then you probably have a massive college team or something. So they have
Mhm.
that money flowing the whole way down the system, where we don't necessarily have that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I think the rivalry aspect too, like just the rivalry in sports, having more teams and a denser, I guess, population creates more of the rivalries, which just kind of deepens that, I think, that level of competition, like, right?
Mm.
So it might be colleges or pro teams or what have you. And that just, I feel like that even attracts people more and more. So that's a huge one, I think, too.
And you said you got a full scholarship before for
I
college.
did.
Yeah, right. So
I did.
that basically means college is free for you while you're playing on the team?
Yes,
Ah.
yes. So I was basically the recruiting process, and I do this now as a college coach, which is
Yeah.
interesting. And obviously, I couldn't have known what that was going to be like when I was a student athlete. But I originally, like I said, I'm from New York, and I got recruited by the coach at a school in Buffalo, which is about 8-hour difference, still in the
Oh.
same state of New York,
Yeah.
but 8 hours away.
Oh.
And so I got recruited to play there, which basically meant I go to the campus, meet the coach, meet the team, possibly get to know a little bit more about the academics. And if it's a place that I feel like I could see myself, then they probably are making me an offer. I get to decide if I want to take it or not.
Yeah.
And so that, again, is honestly purely due to my exposure with volleyball. I mean, if it wasn't for volleyball, I probably would not have ended up there. I may have gone to like a 2-year school or something, and who knows where I would have been. But yes, so that basically covered my tuition. It covered room and board, a meal plan. I mean, I had no debt out of college, and I did not have to take out any student loans. So I was very, very
Damn.
thankful for that, because
That's
if
huge.
it wasn't for that, my mom,
Jealous.
my mom was a single mom raising 4 kids. There was no way that I was going to be able to
Able to do
attend
that,
a 4-year school on my own. So
Wow.
I'm thankful for what the
Yeah.
sport was able to bring to me in
I
that
definitely
way.
hear that from like so many people in America that are just like the debt from like uni is
Yes.
just
Mhm.
smothering, like it smothers
Oh,
their lives.
it's
Totally.
insane. And the school that I went to probably would have cost me $65,000 to go to a year.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, for 1 year.
For
That's the
1
crazy.
year. Yeah.
oh my
We had
And so one of my buddies, just to kind of wrap up on that point, he's I mean, he finished his undergrad, let's just say, in maybe 2008, and he is still paying his student loans off.
Wow.
Jeez.
It's just like, it's insane.
If I can jump in here, because I
Mhm.
am also still paying student loans.
Please do, yeah.
I went to it's a state school, so it's like publicly funded, but it's not one of like the big ones. So like there's University of Michigan, Michigan State. Those are like teams out of the whole country. They're like 12 teams that are like the big teams that are on TV and everything. I didn't go to
Mhm.
one of those schools. I went to
Right.
a state university
Yeah.
where it was $20,000 for my first year because I lived on campus in the dorms and like
Right.
had a meal plan and everything. Once
Sure.
I moved off campus and I was just paying for just tuition by the semester, it was I think it was like $8,000 for my second year and then like $10,000 each for the other 2 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I graduated with somewhere around $40,000 of debt for all 4 years.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's not uncommon at all. Like if I had gone to
Mm-mm.
University of Michigan or
Yeah.
like Michigan State or whatever, I probably would have graduated with 6 figures.
Wow.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's insane.
It's
And
really insane.
they have you sign up for these loans if you can't afford to pay it out of pocket
Yep.
when you're
Mhm.
17 or 18.
Yeah.
And it's
Right.
just
And like you're making
so
like a
crazy.
huge life decision that
Yeah.
I feel like you don't
Commitment.
really
I mean, it's just
the
like you don't
commitment, yeah.
realize how
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
that's gonna
Yeah.
No,
last.
100%.
It's just-
You have no concept at that age, really.
Yeah, no.
You've never experienced what the real world is like. To make that kind
I
of
mean,
decision.
you're
Oh.
likely going to be paying it off for longer than you have been alive when you sign the contract.
What?
No,
Yeah.
really though, it's true.
I mean, yeah.
It's
That's
it's like a mortgage. It's like you're
Yeah.
buying a house.
Yeah.
So compare that to Australia,
Mm.
where
Where-
we have
Well, even I mean, ours used to be free. Like my parents always talk about how they went to uni for free, and they're like, "Oh, it's so silly now how you
Yeah,
we
my
have to
dad-
pay for uni at all." But all of our uni is covered by what's called HEX or help debt. that the government basically gives you an interest-free loan to do all of your schooling. I think there's a limit, like a 10-year limit. I've heard there's a 10-year study limit, but I feel like there's plenty of ways to get around that. So you accumulate this loan, and then it doesn't even come out until you earn a certain wage. Once you earn a certain amount of money, then you can start to then it starts to come out of your wage basically, or you can go
So
is it
overseas
like
and skip.
Is it like a
Apparently.
tax that just gets like taken out of your wages?
It's kind of up to you, I guess. You can so I choose. Well, I used to before I paid it off. I used to it used to take like a certain percentage out each paycheck, and then it's gone. But I paid mine off like
Okay.
2 months ago, so woohoo.
Yeah. So
It's,
you can
it's
you can
pretty
voluntarily,
much like a
you can
tax.
Yeah,
you can voluntarily contribute, but yeah, once you earn over a certain amount of money, there's like a threshold, and then they'll start taking it out of your tax,
yeah.
or like at tax time, you have to pay for it, kind of thing.
I
But
think
like basically, it's like a never-ending like free
Credit loan.
loan that never
Sounds-
doesn't have any interest on it. Like the
It
government
does,
literally
it does have interest on it.
They have.
but
Wait.
It does now. Yeah,
it does
it
now.
does.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but it's a low rate. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
basically inflation. Yeah.
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 But Porkins also
Crazy.
like you can do what you did a little bit different, didn't you?
Yeah, I worked like 2-3 jobs the whole way through uni, so I just paid mine all up front. So
Is that
Sucker.
something? Is that something that you guys do in the US commonly as well, like or like work during
Mhm.
uni
I-
or not?
Yeah, I worked anywhere from 30 to 40 hours a week while I was in school. So, and that was like that was covering my rent and my food. That had nothing to do with covering tuition or anything.
Mm.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And I suppose you were
No.
playing sport, Roxy.
Yes,
Nope.
and that was
Mm.
what added, I guess, a
Countless.
different aspect, I guess, for me is it's not that I'm naive to the struggle, but not naive to the fact that it exists, I guess, in terms of having to have to work to help pay for college or even not being able to afford to
Now,
pay for college.
were you allowed
Okay.
to work while you were in college?
Yes, but the problem
Okay.
was, of course, is that honestly, being a student athlete, at
Mm.
least, and here's the other thing too, is that I played at Division One school, and so there's basically, of course, I mean, I'm not assuming that you guys understand this, but obviously in
I don't
college
know what
sports,
that
there's
is.
Division One, Two, and
I
Three. So
understand it.
at
Really,
Division One
Roxy.
level, right? So Division One level is where I mean, all of your big schools like that are on TV playing college for football or even other sports. They compete at the Division One level. Now there's hundreds of Division One schools, and so if there's a high level D1 and low D1. So I played at a very like low level D1, even though it was still competitive. I mean, I only had about 3,500 kids that went to my college. It wasn't at
Oh
all
wow.
close to some of these other schools. Yeah, it was pretty small, but it was still Division One, which meant
Mm.
that they could offer me a scholarship. But as you go down, if you go to Division Two, maybe they can't give a full scholarship.
Yeah.
Some of them can, but
Yeah.
predominantly it may just be partial academic, partial athletic. And then when you go to Division Three, which is actually the school that I'm at, is a Division Three, is NCAA Division Three. I cannot offer any athletic scholarship at all.
Uh-huh.
The only
Oh
scholarships that
wow.
are available to the
Okay.
students are going to be academic, and the catch is basically, in general, at Division Three, whatever is available to a general student just trying to go to school has to be available to the athlete, but you can't give the athlete something that isn't generally available to the public, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So anyway, point is, at Division One, really at any division, being a student athlete is really a 20-hour a week commitment. And so when you're thinking about going to classes and then going to practice or competing in games and traveling for games, you really are basically, I mean, you're working and you're going to school. I mean,
Yeah.
being a student athlete, in my opinion, was a job. It was a part-time
Yeah.
job in
Mm.
itself, on top of being a full-time student. So
Did
Mm.
you have like restrictions on your scholarship in terms of like you have to be, even though you're playing sport, you have to be matching like a certain grade or something like that
yeah.
in
Oh
school?
yeah. So there's academic expectations if you don't maintain a certain GPA. And some other schools will do that. If they're giving you part of their package might say, okay, you have to maintain a certain GPA, like your certain grade point average, or you have to, like for almost any scholarship and any institution, you have to be enrolled full time as a student. If you fall below full time, like maybe you're only taking a certain number of hours of classes, you may not be eligible for that scholarship. So it's all very dependent on mostly driven by academics, obviously, which I think is important because you're essentially going to school to get a degree. Like most of these schools that are maybe bigger and at larger scale, arguably it becomes all about athletics and nothing
Mm.
to do with academics. But for me, as a student athlete, I was very driven academically. After my freshman year, when I learned that I had to be driven, and even now as a coach, I hold my girls to a very, very strict standard in terms of academics because ultimately most of us are not going to play in pro level. You need to be able to graduate with a degree and be able to do something with that afterwards. I feel like
Definitely.
I've seen
because
Coach
if you're
Carter.
starting
Don't
college,
worry.
your goal should be to graduate. No, you're fine. Do I think it's completely necessary to go to college? That might beg a different question. But if you're gonna embark on the journey, you know,
Get
see
a
it through.
degree out of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
there's no point in starting it if you're not going to
If
finish it.
not, and that's not everybody's path. I mean, that's not everybody's path. But for me, with
Right,
my
right.
girls, they're coming and they want to. The thing is with the sport, and I hate to keep carrying on about it, but it's in my opinion, and I tell them this all the time. Recruiting campus that being able to participate in intercollegiate athletics is a privilege. It's not your right. And so if you're going to be here, you're going to have expectations. And if you can't meet those expectations, then we'll have a conversation to see if this is the right fit for you still. And I'm not willing to budge on that because it's part of kind of the foundation and the culture of the program that I'm trying to create. So
Yeah. Do
Cool.
you, I mean, you say that you hold them to a really high standard. Is it something like a career in sports? Is that something that you would recommend to people?
I
I mean, obviously you enjoy it, but like,
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like
So it depends. I guess if you're most of, like I said, most of the student athletes, at least at our level too, like for volleyball, and I can speak, like I said, directly from volleyball, it is such a small percentage. There is such a small percentage of really professional level leagues that actually are worth the money. That volleyball just doesn't pay a lot at the professional level. It pays comfortable amount, but not in comparison to some of these other pro sports.
Yeah, right.
So with volleyball specific, you're already kind of below what I think the general, I guess, goal is. And so I don't know. It depends. For student athletes, I would say if if they tell me when they're in undergraduate studies that they want to be a professional athlete, I think that's great, but they need to become realistic. They need to kind of see where they're at, what they need to do to get there. And if they are not able to seriously picture it, then they need to have a backup plan. And I'm huge on that. And from a coaching standpoint, it is stressful.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
definitely.
So I have honestly been going back and forth about whether it is something I want to do forever or whether just finding a different way to be involved with athletics is more something that's my speed.
But
So
it'd
to be
be
determined.
do you find it rewarding? I can imagine because it's a big responsibility. You've got young people there who are making huge life decisions, and you can kind of guide them in that area. So would it be rewarding
It
in that
is.
sense? Yeah.
It is definitely rewarding to see, and I think the hard part for me has been the cultural difference because geographically I'm in an area that is just, first of all, not very good at volleyball at all. There's just not a lot of strong high school teams. There's not a lot of strong athletes in
Oh
general.
wow.
I say a lot as in there are some, but you'll have to find them and they likely are already planning to go somewhere where volleyball or their sport is a little more competitive.
Yeah.
And I
Interesting.
think just in general, what can I say? I think the sense of entitlement that I've come across in terms of some of the students that I've dealt with directly um, has been an exorbitant amount. Like I'm surprised at the college level, like some of the parental involvement, just some of the lack of willingness to work hard. It's just like I've had an astonishing amount of I guess shocking experiences with that, thinking, okay, if I'm at the college level, that's just not something I'm gonna have to deal with. And I guess part of that is my own, like I said, naivety. But I've been working through that and just kind of figuring out, okay, what part of this is cultural, what part of it is geographical, what part of it is, well, I guess cultural and um, generational, maybe in the same terms. But yeah, so it's definitely rewarding when I can go through and I get those one or two kids that are in it for the long haul and they take the information, the suggestions, the expectations I set forth, and they actually rise to the occasion. Those are definitely worth seeing through for sure. but lots of other stressors that on top of that. So
Oh yeah, definitely.
mhm.
It's interesting. I actually I forgot to say it earlier, but when
Mhm.
you were saying 6'3", I'm 6'3" as well, and my
Cool.
entire life I've got that basketball.
Mm.
Like, do you play
Yeah.
basketball? Do you play
Yeah.
basketball? Why aren't you playing
It's
basketball?
it's amazing. It's amazing. It's honestly one of my pet peeves. And it's not that I'm not proud to be tall. When I was younger, yeah, I was awkward as hell. I was like a
Yeah,
giraffe on ice. I just couldn't, I didn't have any body control, much like any other 14-year-old. But
yeah,
as I got to get older and I realized that volleyball existed and that I mean, I love the sport to death. It's just crazy to me how many people like feel that it's okay, I guess, to bring
yeah.
that up and kind of push that on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. Oh, you're
Like,
tall,
and even just the
therefore
height thing.
sport.
Oh my God, you are so tall. How tall are you? Like it just drives me insane. And I don't know why. Some days I'm a little better about it than others, but there is no other physical attribute, in my opinion, that people are more willing to point out than how
Yeah,
tall you are.
It's because
And
they're
I guess,
jealous,
you
though.
know, they're
It's totally
yeah, I think that's
it's a
what everybody
jealousy thing.
says.
I'm so jealous of tall
The
people.
red
yeah,
hair.
Yeah,
yeah. Beard,
Rare.
beard gets it quite a bit.
But I
Yeah.
always like all my the rest of my family, like my extended family, my dad's side family. My dad's like 6'2" and he's very quite small in his family. So everyone was like, "Oh, invest," because I play a lot of basketball. Like, invest in basketball, you'll be really tall. And then I never grew taller. So I was always like, I was so sad when I was younger. I was like praying every night, please, Lord, make me taller. Didn't work. Did not work.
Yeah.
Uh-uh.
And do you coach like men's and women's,
No,
or
just women's.
just
Yeah,
women's?
just
Okay.
women's. And actually the amount so the college I went to, most high schools do not have boys volleyball. And definitely at the collegiate level, it's a little more popular, but we did not have a male counterpart, I guess if that makes sense for our sport. And there's no men's volleyball around this area where I am. I say
Right.
Mississippi as in just the state of Mississippi, not going outside of that. Mhm.
As in, so that is that because there's no like desire for it, like, or there's
Yeah.
no market for it, like guys
This
don't
is
want to
It's
not,
play?
yeah. No, not in this
it's
area, at least. In my
Yeah,
go
right.
ahead. Have it.
I feel like a lot of those sports get like no, I don't those sports. A lot of sports in general just kind of get split up into this is a girl sport, this is a boy sport, and it's like that at the local level, at the like the elementary school level even,
Mhm.
or people get involved in football when they're like American football when they're 6, 7, and
Mm.
it's not girls because girls shouldn't get tackled,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
it's from there it just kind of springs out. So like guys play baseball, girls play softball, guys play football, girls play volleyball. Both will play basketball. Both will play
Mhm.
soccer. No one
Mhm.
will go to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I
Mhm.
have gathered, no one will go to the women's version if there is a men's version, and it's really
It's kind of
unfortunate.
and
But
that's a lot of the popular I guess with basketball especially, it's very popular to do a double header, where we'll have
Mm.
your women's team will play first. And I've heard people say this, and I've seen it at our own institution. In women's will play first, and that crowd will be more willing to stay for the men's game. And the goal
Mm.
is to get more seat in the men's game at the later time
Oh,
slot.
really?
Yeah, right.
It's kind of interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, at
Obviously,
least
I'm.
but for me, my standpoint in college, it wasn't just because we didn't have a men's volleyball team. I found
Mm.
very like I felt there was equality across the board in terms of sports. Like there was not any one sport that I felt like was treated any better. Now at some
that's
schools it
good.
definitely is that way.
Mm.
Mm,
But I felt like our volleyball, I felt extremely equal to that of all the other student athletes that were there. They did a good job with that at my institution.
nice.
Mm.
Undergraduate,
Um,
that is.
Obviously, I've seen it's been pretty big in the news recently, at least here in Australia, about like equality of pay in sports, and
Yeah.
especially like with women and men equality of pay. Um, do you have any insights into that, or have you come across? Do you find in your experience that there is
I think
something there that
the
we need to address?
yes, yeah. I don't know. I The problem is for me, I have never worked at a Division One institution. Never even worked
Hmm.
at I've helped out at Division Two, but I think it also just varies from level to level. I mean, if you're a head women's volleyball coach at a Division 1 institution, you're probably, I mean, you're gonna be 3 figures or 6 figures rather, excuse me. And you're probably gonna get additional perks on top of that, which is another thing that I think is pretty much available to men and women's coaches at that level. But from my standpoint, um, it's not gonna be too disparaging in terms of gender. I think it's just mostly gonna be, like I said, that level. If you're a Division 1 men's or women's volleyball coach, you're gonna be getting 6 figures. You're gonna be getting additional money and other perks on top of that that just might not be available at a lower level, I guess, if that makes sense.
That's decent.
But definitely, I think,
Player wise.
yeah,
Yeah.
the amount of actual head women's volleyball coaches that are women is very
Ah.
small.
Right.
Oh,
So,
And I think that that's just across the board,
is
which
that
is interesting.
do you feel like that is like something that is because I don't know, you know the excuses for these kinds of things, like
Mhm.
that there's not enough women that want to be doing this job, or there's.
Mhm.
Do you think it's something like that you can excuse away, or do you think it's a problem?
Um, I don't I don't know that it's really okay. So from my experiences, this is how I feel.
Mm,
And it's unfortunate, but I think it's true. For some reason, at least I found in our sport, girls or women that are at the college level, let's say you have a team of 15 girls, they are likely going to respond much better to a male coach than they are to a women's coach. And
Interesting.
with our sport in particular, that can get very frustrating
Mm.
because I am no less competitive or organized or respectable than a male head coach. But for some reason, I don't know why. They just, a lot of girls, at least females that I've found at all levels, high school and college, they respond better to a male authority.
yeah,
Um,
right.
and so that's been honestly super challenging for me in this position that I'm in now
Mm,
because number one, I am young for a head coach. I just turned 27 at the end of May. And so I guess they look at it as me not being that much older than them sometimes, which
yeah,
my
they
experiences,
think
I feel
you're.
like, make me 10 years older than them.
Yeah, you think
um,
they kind of think that you're their friend more than their coach a bit.
Sometimes, or on
Mm.
the opposite hand, they resent me sometimes because I did play at a higher level, and it
Mm.
may seem like I'm just telling you what to do because I am telling you what to do, but it's almost
That's
like
isn't
they
that what a
don't
coach does?
understand. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But again, I think a big part of that is also geographical. Like, I can't stress that enough. The differences in the um, level of competition here in the deep south as opposed to where I'm from, which is the northeast, or even anywhere else. I feel like it's just crazy. Like, the competitiveness, um, the desire to work hard, and understanding that you're going to get what you put into it. I felt like that just kind of missed the mark in the state, and some areas of surrounding states. But it's crazy. You can drive less than 2 hours and find like a completely different niche of like athletes, and it's just really been interesting to kind of go through and learn as I've gone along. Because, like I said, I took this jump blindly. I'm 18
Yeah,
hours from where I grew up driving in the car, and it's crazy to me to see the differences just
the cultural
in
differences.
state alone or in country.
Yeah.
Yeah, same country. Hmm.
Sorry, Evets, do you want to run Bennett outside? You said.
Yeah, I gotta pop away for a second.
Yeah,
He's
Oh,
been bugging me a lot.
Yeah.
no problems,
He
All
man.
good.
he got sick earlier. That was my issue. So I just want to make sure that doesn't happen again, and we can just get back into this.
Yeah,
So
sweet.
I'll
Let's
be
go on.
back like 5 minutes.
cool.
I'll be back.
No probs.
No
Yep.
worries.
Yeah, just back onto that. You don't really see that in Australia. So we have a similar landmass uh,
Hmm.
to the US, um, but Sydney, like literally across the other side of the country,
Hmm.
feels almost exactly the same to me when I go
Really?
there. There,
Mm.
I see little to no cultural differences
Yeah,
almost
definitely.
wherever I go in Australia. There's like
Wow.
there's very slight ones, like you can go to like coastal towns and it's like a little bit people are usually a little bit more chill,
Hmm.
or like smaller towns, people are a bit more relaxed. But like in
Sure.
terms of the big cities and my experience, I haven't really seen much cultural difference across all of Australia, which is
Mm.
Wow.
something that
Yeah.
you guys have Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
probably comes down to population density
Yeah.
again. You know,
Oh yeah. And just, I
Have
mean, go
have you
ahead.
spent much time in the Northern Territory?
me,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've been there, but not a lot of time, like a few days.
I think there are certainly your experience in the capital cities in Australia. I would completely agree that they have an incredibly similar culture, but I
Mm.
think there are also parts of Australia which are probably less widely visited that have a very different culture.
Okay,
Mm.
okay, fair enough. Fair
Even
enough. I just
your
haven't been there.
suburb, you know, with all those hipster bearded redhead men.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously like
At Evets,
obviously
I'm just
there's
kidding.
differences,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in
No, nowhere near the
general,
scale that it seems to be in
no,
America.
nowhere
Yeah.
near the scale. Like I can go down south and talk to people in a small WA town,
Yeah.
and they are. It feels like I'm just in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
definitely
even
different
if they're
here.
wearing hemp pants.
Yeah, well, if they're wearing hemp pants, I probably wouldn't talk to them. But,
What do you
no,
mean? I've
just-
seen you wear hemp pants, mate.
um, yeah, that's very interesting. I like the diversity that you guys have over in the US.
Oh,
Like just
yeah.
of like you were saying, different cultures, different people, different places,
Yes.
and it's just you've got I don't know. Yeah, I just find it so fascinating, the US, and
Mhm.
I guess
And I
that's
think
kind of
sometimes
why
it can be a really good thing, but sometimes a bad thing as well. I
Mm,
guess
the
mm,
or I
diversity
guess
can be a
vice
bad thing.
versa. I think I've talked about some of the ways that it can be
mm.
negative,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it also can be really positive. I mean, it's when I got the call and got the offer to come to Mississippi, I was like, Mississippi, okay, what is in Mississippi? And everybody I talked to in New York and all my family and friends are like, why? Why are you moving to Mississippi?
yeah.
But I was super excited at the opportunity that I had because where I am, I'm basically year one, which was like I said, 2016, I got hired with the impression and understanding that I was going to have to rebuild a program. Essentially, there was no program before I got here, no volleyball program, at
Mm.
least for 10 to 15-year break because there was a tornado that came through the actual community here where I live. And so it tore down a lot of the original athletic facilities. So they discontinued athletics entirely at this university. And so I was part of that rebuilding process. And hearing that, I mean, obviously that was super appealing.
Mm.
To be able to get out of New York, which surprisingly, let's just say, maybe Long Island itself, where I grew up, has a million people alone. Um,
Whoa.
it was just like, I need to get out of there. It was just too much. And I thought, okay, this is a huge jump, but it's a difference. And I'm willing and excited to get out there and see what I can do and what it's
Mm.
all about.
Mm.
And I have no overhead. I mean, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I have no reason why I shouldn't take some some level of a sacrifice there. So
Mm. Risks. Yeah.
I definitely see why some people were looking at me sideways when I said I want to move. But overall, it's been a huge uh, and wonderful learning experience for sure.
Learning experience. Yeah.
It's cool that you can
Um,
do that, and it's kind of different. The place that you move, it's like we're saying, not that much here. But I was actually just wondering
It's
if
totally different.
it's because we're such a young nation. You know, we've only what have we been around like a couple of 100 years basically. So I don't think we have an ingrained set culture so much. We just have like this amalgamation of all these different people who've come in and like I did some survey with my kids in class the other day, and there was only one kid in the whole class whose grandparents were born in Australia. All the rest is like from everywhere. So we just have all
Wow.
these
Wow.
cultures coming in, and it's hard to have like a set Australian culture in a way, I guess. So that's I feel like it's kind of just like that everywhere. So we don't have our
Oh
set
yeah,
way.
for
Definitely.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have like a bit of a melting pot of cultures here. And I think that is also that probably like you said, that's kind of contributes to not having like like an ingrained culture, if you know what I mean, that like gets passed on through generation to generation. It like never changes or it becomes like yeah. Wait, what am I
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, definitely.
Mm.
That's cool. We were sorry. I want to go back to
Sure.
talking about your kind of experience as a female in sports, and
Yeah.
the whole pay thing. So, there was recently I saw an article that was done about the pay of players in sports, and
Ah.
there was. Do you like, as head coach? Do you have some sort of role to play in figuring out how much people get paid?
No. So, like I said, at this level that I'm at, the students, I guess, student athletes do not get paid.
Okay.
They, even for me as a student athlete, if I when I went to college, like because I got a full scholarship, I never saw a dime. I mean, that was
Mm.
all just done on a scholarship. That's really done on a federal level to some extent, but then also just from a university and institutional level where
Yep.
here's a set budget or set amount that's supposed to be dedicated for Roxanne scholarship, and that gets allotted to admissions for tuition. It gets allotted to housing for room and board. It gets allotted to all the different departments. That is not something I ever, luckily, ever had to apply for, ever had to fill out. I mean, I had to fill out some forms and paperwork, obviously, but not anything that kind of just said, "Oh yeah, here's the total amount that I would like to go to this and this and this." Um, and so yes, the argument and the question, and it's not it's a good, healthy conversation I think to have
Yeah.
across the board. I had it when I was taking a sports and ethic class when I was a sophomore, my second year in college, about whether or not student athletes should be paid, and whether or not that's an issue. And I mean, you can go back and forth, and there's just so many different things to consider when you're looking at something like that.
I see
But
interesting issues with that. I'm pretty sure we talked about it before, Porkins, where you have this like 0 to hero. We talk about the NBA all the time, so you have guys who they get in trouble if they sign sneaker deals and whatever when they're at the college level, and then they go from there to millions of dollars, and they just aren't able to manage that amount of money, or it seems like once they get out of there, a lot of them go bankrupt and that because they've got there's zero to like a ridiculous amount of money. So that seems like a problem in itself.
And and you're saying that maybe it would be good for them to get paid just
maybe
so that
so they
they
can
have some sort of money management skills.
Yeah, I think like financial management's pretty important. So maybe if they had wages there, I don't know. It seems crazy to me.
I think there is actually something like that. Because like if with a full ride scholarship, you're not managing any money in terms of like trying to like, I'm not trying to be disparaging of athletes at all, but I'm just saying if you're in that situation, you're not taking care of any of your own money.
He's ripping on the sports ball, guys. Get him.
Aside from just like day-to-day stuff where you go out with your friends or whatever, or like if you go on vacation and you go on a trip, like obviously that's going to come out of your own pocket. But like Roxy was saying, like it's basically like having a job and going to school, but you're not getting paid for it. But somehow all your bills are taken care of. So then when you go out and like if you become a professional player and you start making all of these buttloads of money, like you really don't have any experience at that point with handling it. So yeah, I think there definitely is something there.
I'm gonna need a quantifiable amount for buttloads. Can you explain to me? I'm just kidding. Literal buttloads. Nice.
It comes in bags that are shaped like butts.
Yep.
There you go.
Buttloads, loads of butts. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I wanted to ask about healthcare as well in sport, and it's on the money topic. Because like in Australia we have like pretty incredible healthcare in terms of so like if I did my ACL or something, I'd be able to go and get it sorted pretty easily. There's maybe a bit of a wait or something. What's it like there for like surgeries like that, or does everyone have to have private health, otherwise you're just screwed? Is that kind of the deal, or what do you do?
Pretty much from my understanding. And now, so from I guess like from a coaching standpoint for our institution, like here, and again, I keep just tying it back to my experiences here because it's the first up close look I've had. And we'll go back to, I guess, the student athlete salary stuff later. But I think right now there is through the NCAA, every institution, every student athlete is required to have some form of primary insurance. And so if you don't have that, or if if let's say most of these students are still on their parents' insurance at that point, if their parents' insurance does not cover that deductible or meet that deductible, then you're going to have to pay for some form of blanket insurance from your institution or from the NCAA, so that if you do get injured through a sport related activity in the time that you're enrolled at that school, then it's covered.
Right.
Now, you can sign a waiver that says that you don't want to do that. But of course, if you, I mean, I know that if you, let's just say you go down, you tear your ACL, you break an ankle, something like that, I mean, you're going to be paying a lot of money
Yeah.
for a surgery like that. But I think the good thing now, and I don't know how much this doesn't really, I guess, answer the question of money per se, but I think the good thing is that healthcare and sports have really become very symbiotic in terms of wanting to try to, I guess, create an environment where sport is more the segue into healthcare and long-term healthcare and more like preventative, and not being, hospitals and such are not really, they're more so, I guess, moving to health care, not sick care.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to kind of take the illness and anxiety and all that stuff that's surrounded by going to the doctor and going to the hospital, and kind of trying to turn it into a positive, if that makes sense. And using sports is huge for that. But in terms of the actual money aspect, I don't know if you had any experience with that, Evans.
I don't.
I was very blessed, knock on wood. I never got majorly injured playing. So
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an interesting one, because like I feel like when you're, especially if it's a very physically demanding thing, like I know most jobs you have, they're not like ridiculously physically demanding, whereas like sports, it's like you put your like body on the line quite often in a lot of like contact
Absolutely.
sports and stuff like that. And
Sure.
obviously in American football, there was like a couple of years ago that there's, or like it's still an ongoing topic, I guess, about how people can get like messed up,
Yeah.
like for
Oh, yeah.
life, playing that sport
Absolutely.
like a game, you know, for people's entertainment and enjoyment. And where that like where does the responsibility lie there is, yeah, I guess it's
I think it's like I said, I mean, I think a part of it is also the training, the coach's responsibility. It's the strength and conditioning coaches, if there are any people that are in charge of helping these kids understand, what's worth it when you're actually practicing, competing, what's not. I mean, it's hard when you throw it into an actual game, because that
Yeah.
sense of competitiveness just, it could
Yeah.
be unlimited.
Yeah,
And
that's
these
right.
kids will do anything and everything to win.
You want to win.
Yeah, and I understand that. And even with volleyball, it's not a but I've seen a lot of it, career-ending injuries, concussions, and things that you don't expect from a sport like volleyball, because it is very low risk in essence, but they're still present. And if these kids, and I think it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about these kids understanding that for most of them, professional is not going to be the end all be all. So I'm not telling you don't go 110%, but you need to know your body. You need to get to know your body, and you need to understand, okay, if this is something that I want to do for X amount of years, this is the preventative and healthcare steps I need to take to get there and stay at a level like peak performance, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think like you were saying, there's a big emphasis, and you place a big emphasis in particular on maintaining that academic background as well, and making sure that you do have, I don't know, I don't want to call it a backup plan, but
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, I guess that's what it is. But also, like, you can only play sports for so long. Like, you can't be a professional. Most people, sorry, can't be a
Yes.
professional athlete after they're about 40 or so.
Yeah.
And that's like halfway through your life.
Yeah.
If you live a long, healthy life and everything. So, like, you've got to take care of your body, like you're saying, to make it to that point. But I mean, at a certain point, they're like, you have to stop, or you will get seriously injured for most people. So,
And I think maybe
trying
even
to
if it's
find
not
that
an
too.
academic emphasis, like an educational emphasis, right? Because when
Yeah.
we talk
Yep.
about the student athletes, and even I think that the decision to not pay students, right, not pay students that are in college a salary for participating in sports, it kind of acknowledges the fact that they are amateurs. I mean, they're students that are participating at a high level or mid level, low level of sports, and they shouldn't be paid an unlimited amount of cash sums that's unrelated to education. I mean, it's just, in my opinion anyway, I don't know, I
Hey, they
go
don't know
on
how
and
to
on,
manage it.
but yeah, so Interesting.
I could go on and on about that, but I'll just leave that one alone for now.
Porkins
I
is
definitely see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Porkins is what?
Porkins is a man
Sleeping,
who has
maybe?
been
I'm just kidding.
riddled with injuries. So any particular of those major ones that you had, Porkins? Did you? Well, how was the healthcare? Because I assume, I feel like our healthcare it's pretty much free. You get like most of your stuff done.
So, public healthcare is essentially free, but
Mm.
public healthcare is quite slow.
Yeah.
So,
But surely,
I-
like, because like, I don't know if you want to go into specifics, but like big injuries that you need to fix right then.
yeah, you could be on crutches waiting 4 months, maybe.
Well, with like a
Oh,
with like a
geez.
incredibly broken ankle. Damn.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
had
that's not gonna happen.
I had surgery about 2 weeks after tearing my PCL. But obviously privately, and that's subsidized by
Mm.
healthcare and all those sorts of things. But that was over 15 years ago, and that was at least, I think it was about $9,000 out of pocket after insurance. So it's still,
Wow, gee.
still does some damage, and obviously now you can probably more than double that now. So
And that's under
I mean,
private.
yeah, but
Yeah.
obviously that's after insurance payments. So
So
that's
let's
the gap.
say you waited for public, would have been just a long
I
wait.
think it would have been close to free,
Yeah.
but it would have been 3 or 4 months wait.
Yeah.
But I couldn't walk, so that would
Yeah.
have been an interesting 3 or 4 months. So.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah,
you ever
fair
hurt
enough.
yourself playing sport, Fresh? 'Cause
Yeah,
obviously
I've
you
got
play a lot.
meniscal tears in both of my knees now, but nothing that's like because I'm never going to be a pro. It's more like preserving myself for being very old. So basically, the way that they deal with what I have is they just chop out your cartilage to stop the cartilage from messing up the rest of your knees, but then you have no cartilage, so you get like really bad arthritis when you get older. So having some cartilage is better than no cartilage in my circumstance. I just know I have to like play like maximum 3 times a week kind of thing, and then won't get inflamed.
And did you not? You weren't out of pocket at all for the
No, so
surgeries and stuff. Yeah.
MRIs, doctor's appointments, I suppose physio appointments. You have to pay for that. I mean, I pay $4. Wait, yeah, $4 a month. I think I pay for my physio healthcare, and that takes a bit off it. But like, I don't know, appointments like maybe $50, and other than that, yeah, all of the doctor stuff and all of the scans and everything is completely free.
Nice.
Yeah,
I think I missed most of this conversation because I was with my daughter. But on the paying student athletes thing, I think there's just such a what's the word? The disparity between like institutions. So you have those like massive D1 schools, and they're doing like Alabama or something that's playing like football, and they're making $100 million a year or whatever it is out of it. And then you've got Duke or UNC or whatever in the basketball. These athletes are generating enormous revenues for their schools.
Yeah.
And then you have other D1 schools which are not in that conversation. So I mean, it's just really hard to draw the line because some of these guys at like the really, really big D1 schools at UCLA or something like that, they are bringing in, millions and millions of dollars and not getting any funding.
Money. Wow, that's crazy.
But on the other hand, obviously, as we were talking about, Roxy was saying earlier, like, it could be like $60,000 a year that they are in some ways receiving in education, and they have the opportunity if they take it. And I just saw somebody saying in the comments, like, oh, yeah, but LaMelo's coming to Australia to play basketball. And I get it. Like, and they're coming here. They're not getting paid great. It's like 80 grand or something. So, but it's compared to not getting paid in the US, it's a lot. But you could, if you were like realistic, and maybe LaMelo has a chance, maybe he doesn't. But if you're realistic and realize that you have the opportunity to do a free education that you're not paying off for the next 15 years.
Yeah,
that's where it comes. That's where the value comes
but
in.
It depends on your school you're at, like, and your kind of worth going forward. And maybe people like LaMelo just actually are coming to Australia because they couldn't actually make the GPA requirements, and they're not quite good enough for the athletic director to fudge their results. So
exactly.
Or maybe he just wanted to go to Australia.
And we just can't wait to have him.
Spreading the big baller brand.
Yeah.
think
So
that's-
it's just a really complicated question that has a lot of gradients, and
Yeah.
they just
Mhm.
draw the line. And yeah, okay, at the
Yeah.
moment, it's having a massive benefit to some of these schools. And I saw someone earlier like, oh yeah, LSU just spent like $30 million on a new football stadium, but they're not fixing the library. And that, you know what,
Right.
that's bad.
Mm.
But guess what?
Right.
May fund their library next year.
Mm.
It's probably their
The
football
football
program.
stadium.
So like it is
That-
kind of, it's one of those things, and it's like everything fresh we talk about, that it's like a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
you know, you got, sometimes it's an investment for the future, sometimes it's, and there's no easy answer. But
But
No, I
but
think-
then
Yeah.
you've also got the like the flip side of the conversation where or like not really the flip side, but where if they're making so much money off these guys, surely some sort of compensation is in order.
oh,
You know?
absolutely.
Well,
Which I
and I
think-
think the
like-
argument is that the scholarship is the compensation, but
right.
Mm.
Yeah.
And the scholarship at the top
When you
schools
think of-
is not comparable to what they're bringing in. But at the
It's not.
lower end D1 schools, it
not.
probably is more than they're bringing in.
Mm.
So it's kind
Right.
of like, it's
And
just
then
really
what do you
hard.
do?
Yeah.
You know, do you
Yeah.
the pros are obviously yes that they would be compensated for the labor and in comparison to the revenue, but then how do you determine that compensation?
Mm.
How
Well,
will
and
they
also-
be compensated? You know, does each player receive the same amount? Do the top level athletes receive the same as those that, you know? Should they receive more if they're all American? You know, it's all sorts of things that it's just like
Mm.
in theory, I think it would bring more problems initially between players, you know, if maybe one's receiving more money. And of course it takes out, if these players are going with a pro mindset, then it kind of takes out that amateurism, competitive nature and passion for the game. You know, maybe they'll lose that
Yeah.
and be
Yeah, makes it
traded
more
for
of a
players that are
business.
just, yeah.
and then
So-
like
What
Porkins
a-
was saying, like
But I agree with Porkins. Sorry to interrupt again. Like it's just,
you're good.
there's so many. I mean, for every positive, there's a negative.
Mm.
And I don't
Yep.
think that anybody is qualified to kind of, any one person or one board of people are
Mm.
qualified to kind of make that decision right now.
And I was just going to add on to what Porkins was saying about like the disparity in bigger schools versus smaller schools. If you do allow student athletes to be paid, then like Duke can just pay six figures
Yeah.
to all of their players and get all of the best
Mhm.
players,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
they're going to Duke because they're getting more money, not
Yeah.
necessarily because that has a good program and whatever they want to go to school in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
What I-
also
what I,
like it ruins the ability to have these truly competitive teams with people all over the place.
Mm.
They'll all just get concentrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
well,
I don't know, one
it's
of the
already
things,
very concentrated. But
yeah.
what I would like to see is, you know, something like, I don't know, 20 grand a year or something, where you'd be able to help with their just day-to-day living. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the
Sure.
kind of thing
Send
that
money
ends up
back
having
home.
people like
Right.
signing their jersey and selling it and then losing their amateur status, you know, that kind of
Sure.
stuff, which is
Yeah.
just a bit stupid. That kind of baseline living costs. We're not talking 100 grand, and we're talking a fixed
Mhm.
number, you know, but
Sure.
Yeah,
hard to draw the
to
line.
cover living expenses and whatnot. Yeah,
So-
interesting.
Interesting.
So, how do you guys feel about the change? Just kind of tying this back into video games, where recently they stopped allowing NCAA team games. Like you can't buy college sports teams games anymore. It's all pro teams because there was the representation of these student athletes who were receiving no compensation.
What do you mean by buy game? Sorry,
yeah.
like as in footage of the game?
So, no. So like,
Like if they have
you
NFL,
used to be able to buy like
Madden,
an so you can still buy Madden. You
Mhm.
can't
Yeah.
buy like NCAA football 2018. It's just not a thing because
Yeah.
in recent years they have realized that like EA is making millions and millions of dollars selling the likenesses of these student athletes who are not seeing a penny from it.
Mm.
And are they due any compensation from that? Because that has nothing to do with the educational aspect of it. That's an entirely different thing where their image is being licensed on their behalf,
Interesting.
but they get no compensation for it.
It
And
seems like
it's gone away at this point now.
all right.
But for
they
a
just
while
figured-
that was
Yeah.
a thing.
It seems
So
like a
that
weird
was
fix to
all-
it.
They never had any names or anything there, so it was always a bit tenuous line. Right? It was,
Yeah.
you know, same number, similar likeness, but didn't look identical.
It seems like a
It's
weird fix
hard,
to
I
it,
think.
though. Why wouldn't they just decide
To
to
just
pay
do
them?
away with it. Yeah.
And also, then when do you draw the line with so we broadcast NCAA games? Don't we? And they don't see any profits for that. So I wonder why they chose the
No.
game for it to be like a standing point.
Yeah.
Too much money to be lost on the
morning.
TV to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Doggo just wants to say good morning.
Hey, what's your doggo's name?
Simon.
Simon.
Hi, Simon.
That's a very mature name for a dog.
Yeah, I
I
know.
don't know a lot of dogs called Simon.
Yeah.
Does he sounds like he's an
And
accountant.
and Bennett as well. Simon and Bennett. That's two. Those are people's names. What are you guys doing?
What do you
That's
name
so
your
good.
dogs? Pink?
Bennett
Oh wait, no,
and
that's a
Simon.
human too. I
Wait,
don't know.
what is your dog called, Fresh?
Mine's Podrick.
Podrick.
That's a human name.
I mean, technically,
Nah.
but it's a Game of Thrones name. They're not people, really.
How dare you? You didn't hear that.
Oh,
Unsub,
good.
okay.
unfollow.
Well, I saw Foxy as well. That you put down that you wanted to talk about your experiences as a female head coach in relation
Sure.
to ethnicity.
Yeah, no, not majorly, but I thought if we were talking about kind of just in general as a female and
Mm.
also being Hispanic on top of that,
Mm.
it's that percentage is very small. So
Oh.
it just kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier. And I especially in this area, and I hate to keep talking about just the disparity between North and South here, just within the US, right? But it is definitely still prevalent. And I
Yeah.
think
Have
very,
you
learning
noticed
for
very
us.
in recent
yeah.
years any increase in that, or like any pushback based on ethnicity or anything, or not in particular? I'm
Not
just
in
thinking
particular,
like
no.
with the
I
political
think
spectrum the way it is, I don't know if that affects
oh yeah.
the college scene as
No.
much.
No, definitely
Okay.
not. And even in this area, it's very hush hush. The people still have their opinions and the people still wave their flags and do what they do, but it's not discussed, it's not spoken about, which is I guess a positivity in terms of having something like this where you kind of are having those conversations that are not being had on the internet, or even in general, but it's
Sorry, you said
it's not as prevalent.
wave
ahead.
their flags as in
Oh yeah.
like
So like down
Confederate
here,
flags. Is that right?
Yeah.
yes, that is a major thing
Testing my
here.
American
And
history knowledge.
yes, good job. Actually, it's ironic because my mom would kill me, but I'm just gonna tell the story. So we'll leave names out of it. But she recently, my mom is, like I said, she's been single mom for all of our lives basically, and she recently started dating. So she meets this young man, and he's got a giant Confederate flag tattoo.
Oh wow,
Oh, Jesus.
that must be the equivalent of the
Okay.
Southern Cross tattoo in Australia.
Nah, I think
That's
it's worse.
That's worse.
You reckon that's worse?
It's
That's
so much
way
worse.
worse.
Now here's the thing.
Uh,
Here's the thing. Okay, because initially that's my reaction. I moved. Wow,
Yeah.
there is a Confederate flag next to an American flag. How the hell does that work?
Yeah.
Right.
But so I've realized for people here at least, and I don't necessarily understand it, and I'm not a big history buff, but I can see and gather, I guess, that for some Southern Americans, deep Southern Americans, that is essentially I don't even know, a rite of pride, just like the American flag is for some of us. And it doesn't make sense to me. Definitely doesn't.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have all of its, every last bit of the negative aspect of that time era. It's not all, I guess, from people's point of view that actually have that flag out front of their yard or
Yeah.
in the back of their car. For them, it's like, it's a sense of pride, and I don't see it, I don't understand it, but I also don't have all the knowledge and understandings to judge
Do you-
either, I guess. So
Sorry, do you mean that they, instead of like, I mean, it's been a long time, obviously,
yes,
since
yeah,
since the
Since
war,
the Civil War.
yes,
since the Civil War.
Mhm.
You mean that like it's lost that negative connotation of being like, well, these guys were basically fighting like
Slavery.
for slavery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I don't
it's
think it's
lost that.
lost. Yeah, I think no,
For
I
them.
think for some it's just an ignorance. Like it's not,
Yeah.
and maybe it's not ignorance. It's just the choice that they say, okay, this is from whatever. This is just like I'm not even joking. There are many people here that have the American flag next to the Confederate flag hanging outside
Right.
their front yard, and so for them, they may not see it as having as much meaning in history based on the negative and the all the negative aspects that came out of it, as much as it is just
Yeah.
So it's
It
I
just
see,
remember,
At
like,
times.
this is my
it's a
local
regional
flag.
thing. Yeah, regional.
I
Yeah.
see
Yeah, it's-
similarities
yeah.
with that in like in gaming where people dress up as their favorite character and that character happens to be black, but they don't understand the history of like painting their face black and that kind of thing, and they're probably not actually racist people, but
Yes.
they just like
Yeah.
they do that and then they don't understand. They're like, oh, why would people? No, I'm just playing my favorite character, and like nobody's educated them on the history of it, so
Yeah.
it's
Sure.
a I see
Now, don't get me
similarities.
wrong. I think there are definitely people that still have that mentality.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Probably
Well,
majority, but
yeah.
then there's very
But-
small percentage, I think, that just don't
Yeah.
view it in that way.
Yeah.
I know someone in real life who's done that. We were going to a dress up party. I think I was like 19 or 20,
Mm.
and I can't remember what he was doing. Maybe it was like Men in Black.
Oh yeah,
And
when it's Will
there
Smith.
was
Will Smith.
yeah, and there was two.
Yeah.
Are we
like,
talking
iconic-
about Fresh? Is this when Fresh?
This was not me.
This was like his.
I have been
one-man-
educated.
And like, but like even then, like I didn't know really, and I didn't think about it at all. And
Mm.
literally at the party, nobody said anything because it was like not. I guess like we really didn't really. Yeah, we weren't aware. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Which is
Mhm.
weird to think about
Yep.
because I feel
Quite-
like I'm.
Question about that: were there any people of color at the party, or was it just
Yeah,
all white
yeah.
people?
Was
Oh
there?
yeah.
All right,
there's
and still
quite a few.
nobody said.
Yeah.
Yeah, like literally
Gee.
nobody. I mean, I can imagine that being very daunting to do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
If you're
Especially
like-
in social
because
situation
obviously
at that age.
Caucasians were the majority of the party.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I can't imagine wanting to do that if I was ethnic. That
Yeah.
would be a horrible
Right.
thing to have to confront.
Yeah.
So it's possible that they were upset and offended. In fact, they probably were. But yeah, it's so weird. But
Mm.
so weird that you can just be unaware.
And we talked a bit
And-
about last time how like the left are often very politically dumb, and like I say that being fairly left as well, so I'm dissing myself, but they'll go ham on like destroying this person who's dressed in blackface when they have no idea about it, and then that creates the whole negativity where this person's like, well, I didn't know why you're being so mean to me, that's it, I'm gonna do it more or whatever. So there has to be
Mhm.
like calm and educational conversation about those things most of the time.
Gotta
Yes.
leave room for growth.
Agreed.
Mm.
Definitely.
Sure.
We obviously in Australia have a little bit of a problem with our like Aboriginal relationship at the moment.
Yeah.
And I know that just to kind of like segue into that, because I really want to talk about the difference between Australian and America in terms of their native peoples. Do you guys have much experience with Native Americans and what's going on there?
A little bit here and there personally, but not a whole lot. I don't know
Yeah.
if Roxy has any more.
Same here. And on Long Island, where I'm from, there's quite a few reserves, like Indian reserves still. And I think at this point, it's just I haven't had that much experience with it. I
Yeah,
mean, I
right.
know that there are, kind of unspoken, respect and rules and regulations and that we obviously need to abide by, at least from that standpoint on Long Island, especially. But other than that, not very much, to be honest.
So one thing that came up recently, as far as I guess relations between the government and like the people who have all of the money in America and indigenous people. A couple of years ago, there was a whole big thing about an oil pipeline that was going through the Dakotas, the states, North and South Dakota, and it was going through an area that was part of a reservation, like an Indian reservation that was, or Native American reservation, however we would phrase it now. That was like, those are set up as places that are sovereign lands, like they're not governed by U.S. law at all, but they're supposed to just be for those people. And this is like, we took everything else, but we'll let you have this still. And then
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of
it's slowly becoming like over time, well, you can't have that anymore because we need it for this.
Mm.
And like the big resistance was, we don't want this oil pipeline running over our land, because if it leaks, if there's an oil spill, then our land is ruined, but
There you
also
go.
the
Yeah.
water source that like carries water to everyone south of us is also ruined.
Mhm.
So there was a big pushback for that, and they were saying, don't put this on our land. We made an agreement with your government like decades or centuries ago saying this is ours and we don't want it here. And guess where that pipeline went?
Yeah,
right through there. So
yeah, I remember hearing a little bit about the
I think it was about 2
saw it
years
in the
ago,
news,
3.
the pipeline and stuff like that. Yeah. Do you?
And then there was an oil spill in that area, not that specific area, but like less than 40 miles from there,
And didn't
like
mess
within
everything
6
up?
months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And oil
Wow.
companies are like, oh my goodness,
Never
like,
heard about that.
ugh, yuck. Do you? But anyway, sorry, not to get sidetracked. I was about to go off on another tangent, but
About oil.
Yeah, about oil.
That's next podcast.
Yeah.
I'm hopping for that gladly.
Do you so obviously the reservation thing is not like, it's not something that we've, like Australia, it's not a path that we really went down. There is still like Aboriginal like owned lands, but for the most part we don't have a system like that. Do you think it is because you obviously mentioned there that it's like they're saying that they want to just build stuff through there and they're doing it anyway? Is that like, do you think it's a positive thing that they have like their own lands still around, or like would it have been just better for it to be like, lol jokes, you're conquered, get good?
I think the former rather than the latter.
No, because like what I'm saying is like they were like, I mean, it was essentially like an invasion, right? When you think of it like that, surely it's better to be like to be like, okay, like it was horrible, but we did it and we conquered you basically, and now we are one society. Or is it better to go like we are a split society sharing land? You know what I mean?
I think because of the history and because of what happened, and there was a lot of, during the conquering era, if you want to call it that, there was a lot of just eradication of natives from the area. And I mean, if you're at war, that's going to happen. But it's there's so many issues there that like it seems like the least that we can do is allow them to have some space where they can choose to not be part of our society if they don't want to. But that said, a lot of people grow up on reservations and leave. A lot of people grow up outside of reservations and then go to them later. So I think it's nice to have that area where they can maintain their own cultural independence. But it's also nice to have it worked into the rest of society as well. So I don't know. I guess I have mixed feelings about it, but
I don't know how much you guys know about the Australia's history, but
I don't know a ton.
It's pretty bad. Okay, so we I mean, and I feel like maybe you guys have won competitiveness. I feel like we won healthcare. so all right, we're at colonization now. And I mean, to be fair, both of our histories are not great in this area. So ours was it was basically a genocide with in certain areas where like we have a little island called Tasmania off the coast, and just the whole indigenous population was just wiped out completely. And then most of the other places it's similar stories, or just crazy segregation. And we call it the stolen generation, where there's a whole I mean, it's probably more than a generation of people, but their entire livelihoods was stolen. And there was many attempts to breed out the population when we first came here. It wasn't until it was 1969, maybe 1967, when they were classified as people and put into the like population counting and able to vote by about the 80s. So it hasn't been long since we've been in like a terrible, terrible place. So where I mean, I feel like we've got similar-ish histories, but ours is just like it's just so
Oh my
recent.
God, so short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's
I-
80s is like my parents almost, or like
Yeah.
people's
Right.
grandparents in
Yeah,
this stolen
right.
generation.
so recent.
Yeah.
I find that the way that I kind of like think about it, it's kind of weird because like obviously there've been wars and there's been conquering peoples throughout history. I mean, the
Right.
Roman Empire like went through and like wiped out like heaps of Celtic nations and all this kind of stuff. But I think that Australia was the last one where that I kind of know of that was like relatively accepted by the world. It like kind of it wigs me out that like
Mm.
the rest of the world was actually kind of fine with not that long ago like
Yeah.
England coming in and essentially like genociding or like trying to for like the black people that were living here, and like whereas and I think that that's why as happened in New Zealand as well, but like New Zealand, Australia, and America, we're all in this like we all did it in this weird time frame where it was like kind of becoming not acceptable to do that anymore, and the rest of the world was looking at it kind of badly. And so instead of us just coming in and going like, lol, we're here now, like it's our land, we've got this, we're in this gray area where we have to where we're trying to encompass the like we're trying to mix the cultures, and because the rest of the world kind of put the pressure on us or like on the nation because they were like, oh, it's kind of not acceptable to do that anymore. Like, what are you doing? So we kind of like, if I do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think you can kind of see that in other places, like in South Africa, like in the 80s,
Yeah.
90s, like
They
the
were
end
very
of
slow to the party.
apartheid there. And then, I mean, even in America, like until the 60s, like that's when the civil rights movement was for
Mm.
basically anybody who wasn't white.
Mm.
And again, like slavery ended in the 1800s, but like you were saying about like the stolen generation, your parents and like your grandparents were there and aware of that. The same thing is true for like I don't know if my parents are quite old enough. My dad was born in 60, my mom in 62, so they were pretty young when that was going on. But like my grandparents definitely remember that time when like segregation was 100% still a thing, and it was not okay for like interracial couples were not a thing that would have been okay at all.
Yeah. Gee.
And that was, that was when our parents were alive. So it's I think we've all been a little bit slow to the party.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
guess
It's true.
in ways.
It's
but
yeah.
it is interesting to like consider the fact that Australia was, I mean, when did colonization start?
18
Like as a penal colony?
1800 something.
Yeah, so we've basically been 200 and what 220-ish years.
Okay.
No.
So I mean, in terms of like world conquest and whatever, that's still fairly recent.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
it is an interesting thing to think about. That was still.
I think that's what you're saying, Woke.
I guess
It's just so ridiculously
acceptable.
recent, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Even like
ridiculously recent in the scale of
the world.
and
Because we were alive when
what's
was
going
it? It was like 2008 when that was our government officially recognizing the
that
sorry
they
day.
did something
We're
bad.
sorry,
Yeah.
we did something bad to your culture. That's like
Oh yeah, that
what,
won't
10
happen
years
here.
ago? Like
Here's a
that's
fruit
crazy.
basket.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then
sorry.
you've also got the flip side of it is like, well, how do you make it right?
Yeah,
like
great question.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything that you could possibly do that could even come close to just compensation for like almost wiping out someone's culture,
Yeah.
and which is
It's really
So-
hard to make up for genocide.
yeah.
I know
Yeah.
in America that they have a is it called affirmative action? Is the like in terms of so is that a can you explain that program to me? Because I'm not 100% on it. It's like a reconciliation kind of thing.
It's I don't know, Roxy, you might know more about this than me, being like involved with college, because I don't know if that plays in there so much or not.
A little bit, but not a ton. But you can
Not a
go ahead
ton?
and
Okay.
I'll piggyback.
So I think the idea behind affirmative action is that these people today, like we're recognizing that what we did to people of color was wrong previously. So that puts these people today in a disadvantaged position. There's the whole white privilege thing. So like I might have a hard life, and an African American person might have a hard life, but they're going to have to deal with things that I will never have to deal with as part of the hard parts of my life. So coming from a place where, you know, you don't have the best schools necessarily, and you're trying to get into a college, affirmative action is there to try and encourage diversity and
Excuse me.
look past some of the differences. So like maybe there are two people who are applying for the same scholarship to go to college. A person of color who doesn't have quite as good a GPA, but they're pushing themselves, might get in line ahead of someone who's white, who has a slightly better GPA and is also pushing themselves, but has had an advantage from day one.
Okay.
So it has to do with like school admissions, more than anything that I can really think of, and like making sure that it's not just the upper class staying the upper class, I guess, or like the people who are ahead are staying ahead. But,
Yeah, Evets is
Grazie?
pretty much on point. That's pretty much, I mean, it's, I guess, like, I don't notice a big application of it here, but it is basically a policy that improves educational opportunities, I guess, for minority groups. And it doesn't have to be, it can be race, it could be your origin, it could be economics, you know, status. So it just further kind of emphasizes that need for equal opportunity. And it's definitely, I think, probably more prevalent in higher education, like admissions.
And was there's something about what Asian Americans were suing a particular
Harvard?
Harvard. That was insane.
I believe it was Harvard. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
I'm pretty sure.
and I think from what I read that was because of affirmative action.
I think that basically they were like making it. They were doing basically the opposite. They were than the affirmative action thing. They were making it harder. Like they were setting a higher standard, discriminating against Asian peoples, to be like, because there was so many of them that were
with hierarchies
outstripping
and going in,
like everybody else being like wanting to go there. They would have, their university would have just become like Asian basically.
Right.
And so they started being like, we need to limit the amount of Asians that we allow to come here. And the way we do that is by holding Asian people to a higher standard than other people. And that is just
Or I think it's
ridiculously racist.
It is. It really is. And I think it's just that the policies are kind of, you know, and we're just going to say this and speak very candidly. Obviously, we're all very open-minded people, but it's kind of like the idea is Asian American students or groups kind of wanting to dismantle that policy because they felt or feel, or maybe there are other groups as well, not just Asian Americans, feel that it's really aimed at helping African Americans and Latino students. I mean, that's like, you don't think about, not that you don't, but you know, maybe they weren't necessarily seeing themselves fit in, or like Evan said, it was just like that most Asian Americans do support affirmative action, I think, overall, but that was against Harvard specifically. Like they were discriminating against them.
Yeah, right. Okay. So wait, so you were saying that like there was like kind of the Asian population were not for affirmative action.
No, there was no, like a portion of them were as it's specifically related to Harvard, that they were feeling discriminated against. But I think it's just, I think the idea was, like they said, that maybe it just needs to kind of help others, not just those two most popular, I guess, when you consider affirmative action.
Oh, right.
But I think that kind of changes not changes, but it brings up the debate of what the point of affirmative action is.
Yeah, for sure.
And my understanding is that the point is to increase opportunities for people who have less opportunities, but also to increase diversity so that people can experience like not just a monoculture when they're in college. And so at that point, I think like Harvard, or I mean, to a certain extent Harvard, but also like legal systems are going to decide whether it's more important to maintain diversity or to help disadvantaged people or
Mhm.
to have the best students possible regardless of their backgrounds.
Mm.
So
See,
you've got to try and find somewhere on that gradient
Mm.
and
mm,
decide like this is what we want to go for. And I feel like they kind of missed the mark on that one.
well, I kind of I'm of the opinion that it should be best student, like 100% best student, even to the point where I've actually said this to someone before. If the Asian culture, or like the way that they do their schooling and the pressure and that they put on their kids to perform and study and whatever, if that is the getting the best results and getting ridiculously intelligent people, then that culture should technically like overtake the rest of us who are lazy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I've said this sorry, just let me finish
Yeah.
before, like, so
Yeah.
if it turns out that Harvard becomes all Asian students, and then I think that is okay. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, so you might be right, and I don't know, probably don't know enough about affirmative action to be super on board with it. But the history
Mm.
of Black Americans and Asian Americans, where they've come from and what they're doing is so vastly different with opportunities that is very hard to just say. So Asian migrants are mainly from families who have enough money to migrate to America, so they've got like a pretty good start in that area. And
Mhm.
obviously, we'd probably agree that people who have enough money have better opportunities, whereas
Okay.
the black population were slaves for a long time. So if they're from such vast circumstance, how do we say then everyone's on a level playing field? Because they're not.
That's
Right.
some pretty widespread generalization. Asian
Yes.
American immigration,
Oh, definitely.
because
But we have to speak in
No, definitely.
generalization when we talk
I
about
know,
entire
but a
populations.
lot of the time, like if you're thinking about like first, second generation, maybe, but other people leave their lives behind, if you know what I mean. So they pack up stuff for nothing as well. So
Yeah.
Right.
I think you have to be kind of careful there. And I think like a lot of the times these diversity drives, like you probably don't want to say it, but the reality is diversity is driven through discrimination, right? Like to some
Yeah.
degree,
Mm.
where you open up
Right.
diversity, you are
Yeah.
intentionally discriminating against
Yeah.
other people. So
Yeah.
that is
Technically,
like
The
yeah.
privileged. Yeah.
Right.
so you're actually driving that through discrimination, and this kind of like society sets where they feel like that's an acceptable sacrifice to make.
Yeah,
Right.
I guess that's obviously the argument for not doing the affirmative action, is that technically it is then discriminating against white people, which like you can't, or not white people, privileged people, which
Sure.
is still discrimination, you know?
Mhm.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
then,
It
yeah, I don't know. It's such a hard one because like obviously they've like been like semi-oppressed, or they've had it harder and they've had less opportunity. So
Mm.
you your initial thought is yes, it's a good thing. I want them to have more chance to succeed because they've come from somewhere that horrible, or they've had a horrible upbringing, or whatever, you know what I mean? But
Right.
Mm.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know, it's a tough one. I don't know where I stand,
And
but
like I feel like if I have to speak in generalizations, if we're talking about a countrywide
right.
affirmative action thing, so like there's a huge difference between a slave for many years as opposed to an economic migrant, and whether or not someone comes and there's I'm sure there's plenty of migrants who come over with nothing, but the fact that they're able to move, and like the general the large amount of them would be people who are able to do that in their culture.
yeah. Um, do you think that? Oh, there was another story. Sorry, that I remember hearing about this lady who claimed Native American like status to get like a scholarship or a job or something like that, but she was like 1% or like 2% Native American technically
The
in her like gene pool.
the only
And
person I can think of is maybe Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, that's the one
maybe
that's in the news.
And
No idea.
she's like, she's in the Senate. Like she's high up. She's running for president next year.
Yeah, wasn't she
Um,
using it as part of a campaign platform?
But
or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
wasn't
she was. And then she did, I don't know, she did like an ancestry.com thing or something and found out that she's like 1% officially, and then tried to be hush about it and then tried to apologize for it. And from what I understand, the people, like the Native American people whose tribe, I guess, she was like a descendant of way down the line, were just like, we don't want anything to do with this, basically.
Yeah.
But I'm not familiar with. Are you talking about like a student or like?
No,
or is that?
I can't remember the specifics of it, but I definitely remember reading it.
Okay.
It was, yeah, I can't remember the specifics. I just remember that. Yeah, I remember it being in news coverage at some point.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and it's one of those. Like that's definitely just pandering, straight up. Like if you're 25% Native American and like that's part of your culture and that's how you were raised and whatever, or even if you like you started to investigate it when you were, you know, a teenager, like a young adult, whatever, and you got into it and you identified with it and that became part of your life, that's one thing. But Elizabeth Warren is not like participating in tribal ceremonies and like living on a reservation, or like she's, in that sense it feels like someone who is trying to reap the good parts
She was
that are
reaping the
coming out
political
now,
benefits. Political
Yeah.
benefits.
but without
Yes.
bearing any of the burden beforehand.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And that, I think that's where because like I know that quite a few of like Silicon Valley organizations started having like diversity policies for their hiring, where they were like, oh, we need to like hit certain quotas of different cultures so that we can have diversity. And that's where when you're doing it based on like ethnicity, it becomes a problem, I think, because you end up getting people haven't really they haven't suffered, you know, because of their ethnicity, you know what I mean, that are reaping the rewards that actually those policies were set up, or like the idea of those policies is to help the underprivileged.
Those who are suffering, yeah.
And that's a
true.
great point, I think, to talk, well, not maybe talk about, but just mention about the privilege and like you said, not having to, you know, maybe making statements or saying things about a culture, and you really just, you may say that you identify, but you haven't had to I guess go through those experiences and endure the same I guess hardships, or on the positive side, I don't know, reap the positive benefits from actually living it.
Like, are you guys familiar with Rachel Dolezal?
No.
She was like she was, I think she was somewhere high up in the NAACP, which is like, oh jeez, I can't remember what it stands for. It's the National something Association for, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People or something like that.
Okay.
But she was essentially like doing the blackface thing. She identified as black even though she was a white woman. And that,
I remember hearing something about this.
That doesn't
ages ago.
It caused a whole lot of problems for her. But before it did, she got a whole lot of the benefits from it. And she didn't grow up black. She didn't have to deal with all that stuff.
Sounds
and
like
then she saw that, you know, black people were starting to receive some benefits to, like, as an apology more than anything, and she was like, oh, I want some of that.
There's a YouTuber called
like
Wiki who's similar. Crazy. That's like a meme.
What did you say, Fresh? Sorry.
Oh, there's like a YouTube lady also. Her name's like Wiki. She's like crazy. It's a bit of a meme, but she's like completely white. And she's like, I'm black. I just feel it. I know I am. It's strange.
It's just I don't get it. I don't, like, I kind of try to wrap my head around it, but like it's just so crazy to me that someone would do that.
Yeah. Evets, you put in here that you wanted to talk about being a straight white male.
How's
It's
that going,
I put
great.
out a whole lot of
Coming out
things. We
messages.
can talk about it or not.
Wait, hold on, Evans. Do you identify as a straight white male, or are you actually a straight white male? What are we talking here? What are we talking?
You'll never know. But no, the reason I put that in there as like a possible topic is just because like it's for reference for people who don't have the notes in front of them. It's under a section called changing culture.
I just saw it on the
so
outside. The perfect time.
Context.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on how, and I mean, we talked about this a lot in the last podcast I was here for. But talking about how now being like a straight white male is, it's like having a target on your back. And for a long time, we enjoyed a lot of privileges that other people didn't enjoy.
100%.
And so, you know, I can't fault people for being mad about us preventing them from being able to do a lot of things. But at the same time, like, there are a lot of, I don't want to do like the hashtag not all men thing, but at the same time, not all of them. And I try to like take all these things at face value and say like, okay, obviously this is a problem for a lot of people who fit into the same category as me. This attack is not directed at me because I don't do those things. And also it causes me to reflect on what I have done and what I haven't done and what I should and shouldn't have done in certain situations. And I think that's a healthy thing, but it's just so, I don't know, it's so weird to have become the subject of attacks through through nothing but having been born white and straight. And a guy. And it's really an eye-opening experience, especially like since the Me Too movement and like Black Lives Matter and all that has like gained so much momentum. To see all of this hatred come out, just like not at particular people, but at the group that I'm in particular, and realize that like this is what other people have been dealing with for forever.
Yeah, it's like kind of like the first time that like there's been any kind of negativity around being straight white male. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and it's kind of, I guess, I like it. It definitely is an eye opener. I like to be like, oh, okay, people have been putting up with this for ages. Not that we've experienced anything like other cultures have or other groups have in terms of like negatives from this. And that's my whole take on it, is that like I haven't like as much as it's been big in the media at the moment about like about men, toxic masculinity obviously was the podcast that we did a couple of weeks ago. I'm not exexperiencing any negatives from that, really. You know, like I am still
my feelings are hurt a little bit every now and then. Like aside from that, I'm not getting affected. I assume is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. So like I get that like there's like heaps of talk about it, and I know that heaps of guys are like not offended, but like there are people that are annoyed that they're getting attacked or they're getting lumped in with all these bad people. But like, really, does it affect me? No. You know, like it doesn't at all. Like my life is unchanged completely. So yeah, like I don't really mind the awareness being raised, but obviously we touched on this in the last podcast. I don't think that it's great that people are lumping people together. I think that should never be done.
Yeah. But I don't feel the need to talk about that anymore unless you guys really want to. But that was just I was just throwing out a bunch of topics.
Roxy is the only non-straight white male here. Do you want to say anything about that?
Actually, I identify. No, okay. No. You know, I think it's hard because you can't. For me, I'm like, I don't get into the topic a lot, especially where I am. For obvious reasons, I guess for Evans, maybe not for you guys, but clearly with the North versus South and Confederacy and Union and what have you. But it's just so touchy, and I feel like it's kind of it's hard because I like all types of people and I
Mhm.
dislike all types of people. So it truly has nothing to do with
So
race or
true.
ethnicity, but you really can't. You just there's no way to not sound racist nowadays. There's no way to not sound like
Mhm.
Porkins was mentioning, to sound like you're being discriminatory, because all these conversations are driven by discrimination. So,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
but I think for me, it's actually I had an experience that really kind of just turned me off to um, the idea of getting too deep into it. But
Mm.
I had made a comment to a player that was surely, the context. I'm not going to go into the details
Mm.
just to spare privacy, but basically, a comment was made on my end to an individual about, referencing a conversation we had had earlier. And then it was later brought to the attention of someone, a third party who shouldn't have really gotten involved in the first place, but we won't
Mm.
talk about that. It turns out to be, that this third party was now accusing me of being racist
Wow.
against a specific player who happens to be African American. She is one of my student athletes.
Mm.
And I simply said, like, how how can I have been racist, I guess, in that moment, or how could the comment have been made? Number one, not having the context beforehand, that this third party had no idea what the context of the conversation was.
Yeah.
And number two is I am a woman of color,
Yeah.
but it's not viewed
Right.
that way.
Yeah. Wow,
Because
that's hectic.
similar to what we talked about with affirmative action is I feel like if I'm not, I guess because I am Latina, I should have been a little bit more. But the
Yeah.
idea is black versus white.
Yeah. Wow.
Asian Americans fall in somewhere in there, but
Yeah.
who knows where? The Latinas fall in there somewhere, but who knows where? So it just kind of gets very muddled and gray, and so it's interesting.
Mm.
But I don't have a ton of those conversations, at least with people, especially closer
Mm.
here in this area.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I am always intrigued to listen to people's opinions, but
Mm.
everyone has opinions, and everyone feels their opinion should be held to a higher standard. So
Mm.
yeah, it's
Yep.
very
And
interesting.
everyone's allowed to have opinions.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That's another
Except
thing
bad
that I
ones.
think
Yeah.
I think, but yeah, no, I think it really is when you start to. I think differences are super important, and I think differing opinions are so important. But when you
Yeah.
start to impose your opinions as more important or
Yeah.
having more validity than another, then you just, which happens
Yeah.
so quick. I mean, it's
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
fine line.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
So-
I
Yep.
think, and we kind of touched on this a little bit on the last podcast as well, where we were trying to Fresh was like getting a bit not annoyed, but like you were talking about how you were like, how can I hold my opinion and my worldview up above someone else's if there's no way to define what's the
Mm.
correct answer.
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
So I put a bit more
And
thought. Sorry, go on.
yeah, sorry, you go. No.
I was gonna say I put a bit more thought into what I was trying to get out. I think and we have this so we have our values and then and that would be our morals and our systems of belief and then our actions and we have to we have to figure out a way where we can act in a way that we see as morally good. And there has to be between there has to be facts as well. So my opinion is that there's got to be facts that drive these. Otherwise, things are left up to interpretation. And I'm for situational beliefs coming to light. But if we don't have set things, it's very hard for me to ever tell someone they're ever wrong with anything. Like why is blackface wrong? If that's situationally that person's okay with that, or they've got a black friend who is okay with that, I would still want to be able to explain why that's wrong to that person. So I'm trying to find where people get their moral facts from, I guess, is a way I would say.
I went to school for that.
Right. There
But
you go.
True.
I still don't have all the answers.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I got a
it's
few
a tough
more
one
that I would
because
have.
yeah, because
But
it's a tough one because obviously it's very easy to be like, okay, in my head, just to because we were using blackface as an example just then, be like, all right, these people it became a symbol of oppression and so we shouldn't do it. But if someone does blackface but doesn't know or doesn't have bad intentions or whatever, is it really a bad thing? And it like, because they weren't being racist. They weren't trying to be racist, but it's just because of something that happened like 50 years ago or whatever like that has made it racist. Do you know what I mean?
So
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
saying,
so-
is ignorance permissible?
Yeah. Good question.
You know what I mean? Like, do we? Yeah,
I
exactly.
think
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
definitely something more insidious when there is intent behind it.
Mm.
But at the same time, like, if somebody shows up at a party in blackface and like that has some direct connection to someone, like some person of color's direct life experiences, and that actually does like cause them lots of grief or whatever, like there's no way in that situation that you'd be able to know as the person showing up in blackface that this other person is going to experience it that way. But I don't think it makes it any less harmful in the moment
Yeah.
to that person who's experiencing it from the other end.
Mm.
So it's trying to find that balance between awareness and intent, and then just what is socially acceptable because X. So
Yeah,
I
so-
don't know.
Like in that situation, I feel like I could say, I understand that you're ignorant of this issue, but the
Yes.
fact would be that this was a like a discriminative act, so many years ago, doesn't matter how many years ago, it was still a act that is still affecting people to today. Doing, hurting people, whether it's intentionally or not intentionally, for something that you can avoid is, I would say, morally reprehensible. Like you shouldn't do it. So
Yeah.
I feel like I've got facts around that I could say why you can't do that. Whereas, I mean, like last week we were kind of talking about everyone should work out their own morals, which is, it's a good thought, but it's just hard to talk about it then.
Relativism.
Yeah, exactly. Moral relativism is. Gee, wait. So where do you stand with that, Evets? As someone who's gone to school, are you a realist or a relativist?
It's really hard for me to answer that question. But I used to think of myself as a relativist, but I didn't when I was younger. It was like said to me that it's a self-defeating argument to be a relativist, because the idea is that like if you're a relativist, then nothing is necessarily wrong unless it's wrong in your worldview. But that means that there's no way society can really form. And like if I'm truly a relativist, then you can walk up and shoot me in the face, and I have to be okay with that because maybe that's part of your moral compass. However, the flip side of that is you have to actually believe. Like, if I'm a relativist, for that to be okay with me, you walking up and shooting me in the face or whatever, I have to believe that, but you also have to believe that that's a good thing for me to accept that as a morally good thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily like a self-defeating argument to say I believe in relativism, because there are so many things that like we have to operate in this world as though we actually do understand it. But we find out, like especially through science all the time, that we don't understand the things that we understand. So it's really hard to have like an empirical set of this is what's true and this is what we're going to base our morals off of, because worldviews shift. Like we lived in a geocentric universe for a long time. With a flat earth.
Like it's acceptable right now to dump on gingers, but give it 100 years, then maybe the rest of the world.
Oh man, like literally, that's gross, mate.
It's not gonna get
what
any
do you
better.
mean? Ew.
I'm oppressed.
Not literally dump. Not.
Not literally.
yeah,
Okay,
we're not talking about
right,
buttloads.
I thought we were talking about. I thought we were going back to the buttloads. All right. I feel like we could probably do a whole nother podcast on that. So let's maybe we should leave that there. It's a bit hectic. So I was gonna say, actually, we're coming up on 2 hours. If you guys, I feel like I want to talk about a couple more things on here, but but totally okay, because we didn't set up a time limit. If you guys have to go, or if people have got to go to bed, Porkins, or if you guys have got to go to something on a Sunday morning, then just feel free to tap out. That's completely fine.
I'm not that old, mate. I don't have to get to bed yet.
Yeah, pretty old though.
But if you're keen to keep going, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about guns.
Hey, let's do it, Woke. Let's do it.
Do either of you guys own firearms?
I do not.
I do.
Mm. Have
Interesting.
you shot your
The
gun
plot
before? I
thickens.
guess everyone who owns it has shot their gun before.
I have multiple. Okay, well, I mean, not with the intent of hurting,
Oh, yeah.
but
No, at a range, assuming.
yes,
Yeah.
out of
Okay.
range, and also by the side of the river. So it's
Yeah.
been on both sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little redneck and a little somewhat professional. Actually, I had an awesome experience. Oh my goodness, it would have been 2015. I used to work at a law firm, and our boss was very wealthy, very amazing guy, very down to earth, just like an absolute legend. But he is very well off, and so he oftentimes would take our entire firm. Now that would consist of approximately 20 to 30 lawyers, plus all the administrative assistants and secretaries, which might be adding another 10 to 15 people. And they might take us out to a steakhouse for, the firm anniversary, or he would bring his biggest clients to his shooting range that was like military grade, and he would just pay for everybody to participate. And so this particular day when he was actually at Verizon, was one of our biggest clients, he brought 5 of the managers from Verizon, like his corporate level, to a shooting lab in a town nearby. And that was awesome. Like, I went surely with the intent to organize lunch and just drop off sandwiches. And he was like, "Well, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I just set up all the lunch in the conference room, blah blah blah, at this particular shooting lab." He's like, "Well, you wanna just join us up on the range?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I do." I was wearing heels and a skirt, mind you, okay, because that was like, it was formal
my God.
attire. But
That's
I was
awesome.
like, "You know what? Sure." And it was amazing. I shot the Glocks, I shot ARs. It was just like, it was an amazing experience. But yes, so
Yeah.
um my little tidbit on the conversation, I guess, would be I love guns. I'm more than happy to go through the paperwork to obtain a firearm.
Mm.
Period.
Yeah.
How realistic do you find Fortnite, Roxy?
Oh, very unrealistic. 100%.
What? Oh, my dreams
No.
shattered.
If I've played Fortnite, that means I can go
I
to
can
war.
shoot guns. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely,
God,
yeah,
please.
for sure.
It is.
And you'll
let me
never
tell you
have
what,
any problems with guns, Jamie.
I can't even. I was completely gun illiterate. I tell this story, not that it was. I'm going to continue because I'm a storyteller and I could tend to ramble, but
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'm gonna disappear from the camera for a second, but I'm still listening.
Yeah, sure. So, anyway, long story short, I had access to, we won't explain how, but I had access to a revolver. And hey, Porkins. And so I was completely, this is just not, kids, if you're watching, this is not the way to do this. All right. But I wanted to unload the gun and look at it a little bit further. So what do? I pull the hammer back and I'm like, okay, this is
Oh.
going to be a problem now because the gun is loaded
Yeah.
and it's ready to fire, like
Yeah.
right now. And I had no idea. I was literally trying to, I don't even know what the right word is, get the barrel to open, or however
Yeah.
you load and unload the revolver. So
Whoa.
I literally sat there for like 45 minutes with this gun on the table. I'm just looking
Like
at it.
not
Nothing
pointing
else
it
is
anywhere.
around. I'm like, what am I gonna do? I was home alone, and
Gosh.
and so
Wow.
I
That's
literally was
epic.
like Googling and Yahoo, what the hell, Yahoo, whatever answers, Googling ways to deload a revolver.
Just
But
YouTubing while
eventually
you got
got
this
it.
loaded gun there.
So
Somehow nobody actually had this problem though. You know, like when you
Yeah.
think it's gonna be a common issue,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I couldn't find
Nobody
a
else?
solution for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
longest. Finally,
Everyone
I
else
literally
just fires the gun.
I
Everyone
put
else
the
just
thumb on
shoots
the
it.
pin and I lowered it slowly, but I literally took the gun outside to
Oh,
an
yeah.
open space and I was like
Yeah,
this. I was
yeah.
like so petrified,
Yeah.
but I had a good handle on the weapon. So anyway,
right.
I will never do that again.
I've shot a lot of
Um,
rifles. I used to go hunting really often, and one of the particular ones that we used to shoot had the same safety. So you actually had to pull the
Yes.
trigger with your thumb on the hammer and like put it down slowly until it stopped. And I was always just like, I'm just gonna really carefully pull this down. And I mean, it never went
Oh,
off. But I thought it was the stupidest safety
Yeah.
ever. Why would you have to pull the trigger to have the safety? It's
I
just
don't know.
crazy.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I just want to point out in the comics, I just want to emphasize this point that Ziflex or Zyflex made.
Yep.
Don't look down the barrel of a gun ever. ever.
This is true.
Because
Yeah,
you,
no.
This is true.
you don't know if it's loaded or not.
This is
Yeah.
true.
If it's yours and you're cleaning it, whatever, that's different. But
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
So
I have
so
now become a lot
general
more
advice.
educated.
yeah. So, but Roxy, so
Yes.
one of the things I took away from your conversation, your story, your lovely story, terrifying story, is that you owned a gun before you considered yourself gun literate.
well, I think
Yes.
had access
Well,
to
I
a gun.
didn't
or
own.
did
I
you
didn't
own
own.
it?
Yes,
Didn't
I
own
should.
it.
I should
Didn't have
own it,
access
okay.
to it. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Had
didn't own
access.
that one.
And
And
I-
actually, here's another funny story because I'm just a storyteller.
Yep.
This is absolutely terrifying. I promise that my mother is an absolute saint. Just okay, but she was a correction officer for 20 plus years. My mom is now retired, and she used to work on Rikers Island, which is in New York. But anyway,
Which is a
so
prison.
It, oh, so
yes, it is a
correctional-
Is that what
prison.
you're talking about? Yeah.
What did you say?
Correctional officer.
Officer,
Yeah.
which works. That's
Uh-huh.
like a guard at a prison,
Yep.
kind of thing.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
And Rikers is actually pretty. It's a pretty rough prison.
Yeah.
But anyway, so um my mom was about 8 months pregnant with my little sister, and she comes home, and what she normally does is I normally would never hang out in this bedroom. She would obviously have all of her her uniform, her badge, her gun, and all that would just kind of be out on the bed, and I would never be in there necessarily unless I was with her, and of course at that point she'd make sure it was childproof. But in this particular day I wandered off into the bedroom and I picked up her gun, and it was loaded. I was probably, I guess I had to have only been maybe 7 or 8.
Oh.
Mhm.
And she knew something was wrong because I was quiet. She was folding laundry. I had wandered off, and when she didn't hear anything, then she knew that something was up. So she calls my name. I don't answer, and she calls my name again. She makes her way to the bedroom, and there she is standing in the doorway, pregnant. And here I am with a fucking loaded gun.
Yeah.
Look, mom. And I was literally
Yeah.
barely borderline pointing it at her. Now, I didn't fire, obviously. She just, luckily, my mom was very stern. So when she yelled at me, I knew that I'd have to listen. And she just, very calmly told me to put the gun down, but sternly told me to put the gun down.
That's
And I did. And
hectic,
that was the
man.
end of it.
Oof.
But oh my gosh, yeah.
Right.
So apparently I have
That's
had an
good.
interest in guns before I even knew what I
Wow.
was doing.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that kind of gets to a point, and I think maybe Woke you were gonna go here, but where
Yeah.
it's like guns in and of themselves, I don't have a problem with, but the ease of access, I think, is an issue
Mm.
that we aren't really dealing with here. So like it's really easy for, like in that situation, like your mom was trained to have firearms, and she
Mhm.
used firearms for her job. Hopefully not very often, but like in the event that something came up, that's what it was for.
Yeah.
But then she brought it home, and it was just, and I'm trying, like I don't want to say anything bad about your mom, and I'm
Oh,
not.
please, no.
I don't
it's
think
just,
I am.
no.
But
No.
it's a situation where like she just had her routine. She came home and she
Mhm.
put her stuff on the bed, and then a 7 or 8 year old is able to just walk in and grab it, and she could have done something really terrible with it and had no concept of what she was doing at the time.
Mm.
Sorry, you could have done
Exactly.
something great. You're here. I can
Right.
talk to you.
Yeah.
But-
Right.
But that the ease of getting them and the ability to access them with no training whatsoever. Like you said, you had to sit there for 45 minutes looking stuff up on the internet with a loaded gun cocked and ready to go sitting next to you because you didn't know how to deal with it.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
luckily you're smart enough that you went online and figured out how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
Some
like
people
a
aren't.
12-year-old
It
kid can
goes.
go into his dad's gun cabinet and just, like, if it's not locked,
Mm.
and just go grab a gun and show it to his friends,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then somebody can die. And it's just,
Yeah.
that's
So,
my
yeah.
big problem with it.
Well,
The-
that is one of many reasons why I am for the Australian way of doing things, where we had the big gun buyback and we don't have guns as a commonplace thing in our society anymore.
Yeah. So can
but
you guys explain that a little bit more? Because I really don't know
Yeah.
anything.
So
we
basically,
had
in
2 different
Australia,
ones.
there was so the one that really put the nail in the coffin was wait, was there 2?
There was 1996 and 1990 and 2003, I think, were the 2.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
That was a terrible expression as well. You don't
Nail
use
in the coffin.
right now, man.
Oh, God.
when we're talking about right. Oops, sorry.
By the
but,
way, I am listening as well, but I do have to step away. So
Do
Yeah,
you guys want to do like a quick toilet break? We've been drinking beer. I like really need to
Yes.
pee.
Yeah.
Can we do like a
Wow.
2-minute toilet break and we'll resume? I'll put
Yes,
up a
I'm down.
screen. All right, 2 minutes. Let's
Works
do
for
it.
me.
Let's do it. We'll be
Sweet.
right
Alright,
back,
cool.
fam.
BRB.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air. 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 Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground is where I spent most of my days. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool and all shooting some b-ball outside of the school. When a couple of guys who were up to no good started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight and my mom got scared and said, "You're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel Air." I begged and pleaded with her day after day, but she packed my suitcase and sent me on my way. She gave me a kiss and then she gave me my ticket. I put my Walkman on and said I might as well kick it. First class, yo, this is bad. Drinking orange juice out of a champagne glass. This is what the people of Bel Air living like. This might be alright. Yo, home to Bel Air. This might be alright. I pulled up to the house about 7 or 8 and I yelled to the cabbie, "Yo, home, smell you later." I ain't trying to get arrested yet, I just got here. I sprang with the quickness like lightning disappeared. I whistled for a cab and when it came near, the license plate said fresh and it had dice in the mirror. If anything, I could say that this cab was rare, but I thought, man, forget it. Yo, home to Bel Air. This might be alright. Yo, home to Bel Air. This might be alright. Champagne glass, drinking orange juice out of a champagne glass. A champagne glass, a champagne glass, a champagne glass, drinking orange juice out of a champagne glass. A champagne glass, a champagne glass, a champagne glass. Yo, home to Bel Air. Yo, home to Bel Air.
Cool.
Welcome back,
Alright.
everyone.
Yep, we're back. That was a
Wild Porkins is spotted.
a must-needed break.
Mm.
So we were talking about gun control. Oh, not gun control. We were talking about
Well, guns.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. And so in Australia we had basically big buyback. So there was the big one in 1996, was it, where there was a mass shooting event in
Tasmania.
Yep.
Port Arthur.
Port Arthur.
Port Arthur, in Tasmania. And after that, it was they used the support of the public perception of guns at that time, which is right after a mass shooting. It was like everybody's like, guns are bad, and they used that to then start the process of a buyback of guns from like everybody. There's certain professions you can still get guns in Australia, but you've got to meet. There's like a certain criteria that you have to meet to be able to get your hands on them.
It's a lot more difficult than in the US anyway.
Oh, like ridiculously difficult almost.
Yep.
To the point where most people cannot legally get their hands on a gun.
Or
Wow.
it's just like most people don't have a gun. It would be
Yes.
a small percentage, as far as I'm aware, of people that have guns,
Yes.
and they're for hunting purposes only. For
hunting purposes,
farms.
or it's their profession that they have to own a gun for.
So
Not-
I
not
wanted
for
to. Sorry.
Sorry?
Not for personal protection.
No,
that's
never.
a line that's drawn. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Like
um,
you,
and I think that's a
part of the
distinct
thing. When you have to have, like, it has to be for hunting, and you have to be able to like show that you like where you hunt, like why you're hunting,
where you gonna store it,
etc.
like lots of
etc.
stuff.
Yeah, where you're gonna store it. There's so many things that you've got to, so many loops you got to jump through. So it makes it's almost impossible for a normal person, in the public, to get their hands on a gun legally and own a gun in Australia.
And there's a lot of background checks and things like that. Yeah.
Ridiculous amounts.
Like walking down the street, there's like a 0.0001% in my mind that's saying it's ever possible that actually there's 0%. I never ever think that I'm ever going to get shot in Australia ever. It doesn't ever cross my mind, like at all.
Doesn't cross my mind
even when I'm hunting. No, but yeah. But what I wanted to actually ask, the reason I wrote it down was that America seems to, maybe this is a point for Australia, guys, but America seems to have a problem in terms of, compared to the rest of, I suppose you'd say, socioeconomically level-ish countries, at least as far as you can compare, with gun deaths, whether it's homicide or suicide, and they're just much higher than most other countries that you'd want to compare with. Like, you could look at like Honduras or whatever, but it's harder to compare those. So is like, what do you do about that? Particularly, there's a lot of media, I suppose, around school shootings and the effects of those. So what is there something you can do about that? I feel like proposing a complete gun ban isn't feasible, but it seems like at least the guns that are used in shootings are always originally purchased legally as well.
Yeah. So we were talking about accessibility a little bit, and like how Roxy found her mom's gun and everything. Now, as an adult, not having a gun in the house. Actually, I rent this house, and there was a gun here, but it's not loaded. There's no ammo. Like, it doesn't actually pose any threat.
Sorry,
it's basically
your house came with gun.
Yeah.
Wait, what? What? Are you kidding?
All right.
That's insane.
Hold on a second.
Don't get. Can he put? Is he gonna get his gun? I don't know if he could pull a gun out.
I don't have to. It's
Okay.
not mine.
I don't
Is
know.
that TOS? Okay, I won't.
I think that's
I won't,
TOS.
just in case.
I
just
think
in
it's
case.
TOS.
But
No,
yeah,
I
so
think
there's a shotgun.
Yeah.
There's a shotgun that was at my house
What?
when I moved in here,
My
A
goodness.
shotgun.
and it's
Flying
like
around.
the person that I rent my house from is someone that I work with, and like this is the only house that she has and rents out, and it was just something that was left here, and I'm just gonna leave it here when I leave, and she's gonna take it and do whatever she wants to do with it. But right now, it's basically just a big paperweight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, she's gonna go on that shooting. But anyway, so like it's another situation where like as an adult, I have no personal interest in firearms. Like it's just not something I really care about. It's fun to shoot guns. I've done that before, but I don't want to own one. But if I did want to own one, there are numerous ways that I can go and get one without filling out any paperwork.
Yeah.
And that, like, you can literally just go online and find, like, on Craigslist, find somebody who has a personal collection, and it's legal for them to sell something from their personal collection to you for your personal collection. They can't go into business as a gun dealer, but I can just, like, if I had a friend who had a gun, I could just go and buy it from him.
What really? Like, so
is there
private
is
sales.
there the distinction of it's for collection purposes? So like,
So-
if you were to then go shoot that gun, you would be breaking the law.
No, because as a part of your collection, you have a right to use that firearm too. If I went and shot someone, or if I shot someone's personal property,
That would
then
be
I'm
against
breaking the law.
That's true.
But
Would the person that sold you the gun be liable as well?
That I don't know.
I don't know exactly how that plays out. I don't believe so, because you want to have like a bill of sale or something like that, or like some kind of receipt to show that this isn't mine anymore. Or in the case of like illegally obtained weapons, if somebody steals a gun from somebody else and then it's used in a crime, the person who owned the weapon can be held somewhat liable if they don't report the gun as stolen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on a case-by-case basis. It's very touch and go, but the idea behind like the distinction between having a collection, like a personal collection, and being a gun dealer is that you can also go to, like, you guys may have heard of the gun show loophole, maybe not, I don't know, but
Yes.
the idea there is that these personal collectors are not gun dealers, so they don't have to get licensed or anything. They don't have to do like background checks and everything. They're not held to the same standard, but they can go to a gun show with like 15 pistols or like 15 rifles or whatever, and just have them there and say, I'm whittling down my collection, or like rotating it out, whatever. So that's where you get into like the tricky gray area, where it's same thing, you can go online and just go and buy one. You don't have to go through any legal system at all. Like, there's no regulation for that aspect of it. It's just new guns or guns that are being sold by a licensed dealer.
Wow.
So that's one of the major differences that I'm seeing here between us and you guys, is that like virtually no one can own a gun in Australia. Virtually everyone can own, and within a day or two obtain a gun if they want to. It's a weird thing.
It is.
It's
There
not
are
that
definitely
no one can,
types.
Sorry, you go.
No, go ahead.
It's not that you can't own a gun in Australia. You can get your hand on it. It's just
No one
been
does?
made. Yeah, no one does. There are people that do, but like they made it so that it's work. Right.
It's
So
types of
there's
measures
work
you have
that you
to go
have to do to, if you really want to own a gun, then it's a little bit of work, and that deters like 99% of the people.
And it's
So I'm
become,
curious, I guess. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's become a bit more culturally intrinsic to America.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, there's some habits, like, for instance, I don't know, I guess smoking is one of them, where in some countries it's cultural and in other countries it's not. And it's the same thing with guns. And we don't have it, I guess, as a cultural mainstay in Australia. And so by it not being as intrinsic, you also don't feel the need to acquire one for, I guess, personal defense as well. So it's kind of like that propagates itself. Whereas in the US, I don't have any particular interest in guns, but I might be interested in acquiring one because of personal defense, because everyone else has them, and that's like a self-propagating thing as well.
And so I'm curious, in Australia, do you guys have, like, for the types of, I guess, measures and extent that you have to go to obtain one? Do you have like a concealed carry law? Do you have like limits based on maybe those who have committed violent crimes, like that they're not allowed to, or you just don't really?
Yeah, so you've got to do like criminal history checks, and
I'm assuming those are just like, if you don't pass that, you're just pretty much
yeah, you're done.
It's just it's more strict,
No
and it's
gun for
more
you.
like it's they say it's the purpose. Well, pretty much the purpose is you've got to write down where you're going to use these at a range, or like you can't say that you're going to use them for self defense. Basically, that's not from what I know, it's not like a thing that you can say to get a gun. Basically, it needs to be for
there's-
hunting
I'm
purposes.
assuming-
Or, yeah, and like the amount of people who like no one in the city would. I'm saying no one, but the vast majority of people in the city don't own guns.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So-
I know personally quite a few people that own.
Yeah,
like,
you were telling me this the
guns.
other day. He's like, "Oh yeah, I just
Yeah.
drive around with guys who got guns in their glove box or whatever."
Yeah, I've been shown
Damn.
a gun. In someone's
was it
vehicle
was it this?
before.
Oh, sorry.
But the
And-
difference there is,
So-
right, is that you've been shown a gun. Misterevets had one left in his kitchen from the previous.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's
You know,
completely
You know? So
different
like,
culture.
for us, it's like, oh, I've seen one, and then for them, it's like, oh, the old house
Yeah.
owner left one here.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Oh, or
100%.
my mom left it on the bed. Like,
So I think if we can talk a little bit about that cultural difference, like Porkins was bringing up, there's a whole lot of money tied up in it, and like a whole lot of stuff from the NRA, and some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't, and we can talk about that another time probably. But we could do a whole podcast on just that.
Yeah.
But the argument from the other side, I consider myself as like a gun control advocate as opposed to a gun rights advocate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And from the other side, the reason that it is such a culturally huge thing, I think, is because of the idea of being able to get rid of an oppressive government, which is what
That's
our
so interesting.
country was essentially founded on.
They're the Second Amendment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's a lot of argument over the Second Amendment and whether or not guns can be limited, stuff like that. But there's a whole history where like the reason the revolution was a success was because France came in and helped us realistically. But the reason it was even a possibility was because everybody had weapons to protect their homesteads. It was literally for protection, but it was more for protection from wildlife at the time than
Yeah.
protection from other people who are like coming to invade your home.
That's such an interesting concept.
So now the argument a lot of the time boils down to like we need to have our own protection, not from other people, but not from other like citizens, but from an oppressive government. And so that's where the argument for like being able to own any kind of weapon comes from, because like if I have a pistol and that's all I have, and the army comes bearing down on with like guys in SWAT uniforms with like ballistics vests and stuff, like all this crazy equipment, there's no way I could possibly stand a chance against them. Now that said,
What?
I don't
Great
have any
pistol for the
drones
win.
that I can drop explosives with.
Yeah. That's true.
But yeah, it's like drawing on Fortnite. It's like having a great pistol and the government has the entire arsenal.
Yeah.
And so it seems like a really weak argument to me, but I think that's why it's so culturally ingrained, is because that's like it's really
and do you
part
think,
of our history.
like, I know that the Second Amendment came about because of that, and to like a tyrannical government, we need to be able to protect ourselves from them. And and you mentioned the NRA, and I guess there's a whole, like I said, a whole lot of like lobbying, whole lot of lobbying goes into and controlling of funds. Actually, no, let's not talk about the NRA. What was I saying before?
That's a can of worms, man. That's a can of worms.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's a possibility, like, or even like you're saying, it's a bit of a weak proposition that we could even protect ourselves if the government was able to form a tyranny.
I mean,
and
we
do
spend
something.
so much more on the military than we spend on like virtually anything else in the United States. Like it's like the weakest argument you could possibly have.
And from
but
what I understand,
people latch onto it and they really believe in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There might be a few military states in the Middle East who got better weapons than the people in America, and they haven't done too much. So,
probably.
Yeah, it's not a strong argument.
Yeah, no, exactly. And from what I understand about the Constitution and the amendments, is that like you are able to, because a lot of people seem to be like, well, it's our it's an amendment. We have to keep it.
It's,
But
yeah, it's our
isn't-
Second Amendment right, but it
Isn't
is
an amendment something that can be
It's a cha-
amended?
Yeah,
No, it's
an
something
amendment
that
is
was
a
amended,
change
wasn't
to
it?
the erect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
right.
is a change.
It is a
can
Sure,
be
could
changed.
be changed again.
Yeah, and can be changed again. Okay, because that seems to be an argument a lot of times. They're like, oh, it's our Second Amendment. They're like, we can't change it, but you can.
Well, and yeah, you can't even
can
call it
amend
like
an
a
amendment.
constitutional right because it is. I mean, you can, but like you
Yeah.
can't if you're a fundamentalist constitutionalist
Yeah, because it wasn't
using
in the
all those big
It was
fancy
amended.
words. Because yeah, it wasn't in there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I just find it so unfathomable to me, but I get that unfathomable. Yep. Yeah, I
There
said
you
that
go.
That's a word. Yep.
Yeah.
to me that you guys that they're so commonplace, like that
Yes.
like I would be terrified if I knew that that everybody owned guns around me.
But here's the
Well,
thing,
and
too,
okay,
first,
so
like never walking
Yeah.
down the street thinking, oh, like I might get. I mean, I give it. Granted, if you're in different neighborhoods, obviously that contributes. Everyone, and no matter where you are, I'm sure you've got good parts and bad parts of towns, cities, etc. But
and I mean, I live
there
in.
are
I
times
live
when
in-
I think I'm like, if I'm walking the dog, late at night, maybe I should bring something with me. That's not Twitch. No, we didn't hear that. But it's just a thought. It is a thought. It is something that comes to mind. It is something that's like, hey, this could happen. My mom, when she was in Brooklyn, living in Brooklyn, she observed a woman get shot point blank at the corner of a street
Whoa.
in New York
Wow.
City, and it's just like for no other reason. Who knows what? Coming out of a White Castle. So it was just like, you guys have White Castle, right? You ever heard of White
No,
Castle
we
before?
don't. But I have watched Harold and Kumar.
we
Oh,
don't even have
man,
White
well-
Castle in Michigan. I mean, we do in
Yeah,
like the very southern part, but
They're dying off a little bit, but anyway, I made the
So
reference.
wait, sorry,
hoping
so what
someone-
is it?
It's White
It's a
Castle.
burger
it's like
joint.
a fast food joint. Yeah.
Fast food. Okay.
It
Yeah.
looks
They
amazing.
nickname them
in
murder
movies.
burgers because they
it's
will mess you up.
Wow.
Equivalent to a Taco Bell or McDonald's for some people, if you catch my drift. But it is just like, it is rough. But they're good foods, but just like drunk food. But it's
Right,
really
yeah.
it's
Greasy.
really kind of crazy to think about. Like you said, it's just not something you guys ever really are worried or ever considering or I guess learned about.
yeah. And like on that note, in that same vein, like I live in a decent part of town, and like Kalamazoo isn't like known for gun violence in the same ways like Chicago is or whatever. But I've heard gunshots like from every place that I've lived in this town.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And like
There
it's relatively condensed. Like it's mostly confined to like the city itself is I don't know, like 10 square miles or something like that. Like for the more dense area, like there's a rural like outlying area, but
Yes.
living in town and like renting different places, I can't move to a place where I won't hear them eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've lived
heard
here for
them.
not quite a year, and I've heard gunshots at least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, right.
Same.
So it's
Just walking
it's
a dog, or
weird.
it's just kind of like it's
That's
weird. It is
crazy.
really weird.
That's actually insane.
Yeah.
To think about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and it's our city is actually fairly. It's about maybe 25,000 people in Columbus, where I live, and I mean, I legitimately was in my front yard, and there was a shooting like 2 blocks away at a theater that was on like the main strip, and it's just like,
Wow.
oh, there's another shooting. It's kind of crazy.
Wow.
I mean, it's actually
One time
really
I
sad.
thought I heard gunshots, but then I realized I just let the game load into the next round.
What's going on?
Kelsey
Oh,
said in
God.
the chat, gunshots or some fat backfires.
Yo, Kelsey
real.
would say. Yeah, so it seems like guns are just they're a what do you call it? They're like a force multiplier. So if someone wants to go on a killing spree with a knife, they're not going to get anywhere near as far as with a gun. So these mass shootings and that seem to happen. It feels like, and I know there's arguments like for like teachers to have more guns, and like we should increase the amount of guns that the good people have so that the bad people can't shoot them. Whereas it's like the conversation doesn't often go towards, well, I haven't seen anyone go towards restricting access to guns. If these crazy people are going to get guns, they're going to, like, if I lived in America, I don't want to have to send like my little Johnny off to school and be like, well, hopefully, Miss Johnson's going to dome that kid who comes in, he's going to shoot up the school. Like, it seems like a bad a bad way to do things, rather to increase the amount
No.
of guns that people have to defend themselves.
Isn't it?
And I want
isn't
to
it
talk
also,
about.
I know you go.
Oh, I just wanted to touch on a comment that was coming up in chat by Ragnar. Is it ignored when you hear the shots, or
Yeah, I
are
saw that.
cops called? And for me, I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of the bystander effect. Like,
Mm.
I have never called
Someone
the
will
cops
call.
once. Yeah, they have never
Yeah.
called the cops once when I heard
Mm.
gunshots. Now, if they were at my neighbor's house, probably, but I've never
Yeah.
been the closest. I mean, apparently there was someone shot outside my window when I was living in the city, but I was again just separated from it, and outside of
Mm.
that, um, I was not young enough to call the police back then. But if it was something immediately in my vicinity, probably. But again, it's just kind of like when you see a fender bender on the side of the road. I mean, you just assume that someone else has called the police already.
Yeah.
And then there was another comment that Monica said, "So crazy how hearing gunshots seems so common and unshocking," and it's true.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
desensitized, in my opinion, I guess,
Mm.
living in the U.S.
Wow.
Not in the terms of like when I hear about it or see about it or hear stories. I mean, I have severe empathy and sympathy, but it's just the actual act of shootings is just so
Yeah.
much more
Mm.
And I mean,
common.
I think that though that is kind of a fair assumption to make in terms of
Mhm.
someone else would have called the cops, because even in Australia, I can't remember what it was. There was an explosion. A car crashed like near my house, and it blew up. There was like a stolen Lamborghini or something like that, and it crashed and it
Oh, I
blew up.
remember that. Wow. Yeah.
And I was asleep and it woke me up, but I didn't know that it was an explosion that woke me up. So then it was quiet once I woke up, so I went back to bed. But my housemate woke up and he didn't know what was going on, but he called the cops because it was so loud.
Mhm.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
he called the police and he was like, hey, there's just like sounded like an explosion, like this is where I live. And the cop was like, the police got all his details and whatnot like that, and thanked him for calling in. And he said, just out of curiosity, like, has anyone else called about it? And they had 50 or 60 phone calls
Oh, jeez.
about that, the
Wow.
explosion.
There you go.
Like,
Just a
the
car
space
exploded.
within the space of like 30 seconds.
Wow.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Like everybody would just
It's good,
instantly
but-
That's
call
how
the
different
cops,
it is here.
So I think that you'd be surprised how how many people actually call
People
the
have
police.
actually do it. Yeah.
And that was
that's
just that was
in
something
my
so small.
even with not kind of getting off topic from the guns, but even just in
Yeah,
general,
sorry.
calling the police for any sort of sense of emergency. I think I've only ever called the police one time in my life, and that was when I got into a minor fender bender. I indicated that it was not a life or death emergency, but I just
Yeah.
needed police on scene. And
Well,
other than that, I don't
so
think I've ever
in-
deliberately called 911 for anything.
In Australia,
So,
we
yeah,
have
if
two
you-
separate numbers. We have a non-emergency number.
Yep, we have that
and-
too.
Mhm.
and we have I there's only one time that I've called like 911, like
Sure.
000.
Yeah.
Um,
So what's it? Yeah, I was
the-
gonna say, what are the? This is completely off topic, by the way. How are the phone numbers for you guys in Australia?
8 digits for home numbers or 10 for mobiles, I guess. But
Yeah.
yours are like, do yours start with 555 or is that just movies?
No,
Yes,
that's
no,
movies
that's-
because
it's just
none
movies,
of them
but-
actually start with 555.
Oh, right,
No, but
right.
it is the same format, right? So
Okay.
like 3, the area code,
Okay,
which is
okay.
3 in parentheses, and then it's a 7 digit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah.
7. Yeah, 7.
Yeah,
digit
okay.
phone number.
So we have
Interesting.
area codes as well for like
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's by state.
Yeah.
So each state in Australia,
We're
so
08.
WA is 08. So if you're in another state
Interesting.
and you want to call Perth, you have to go 08 and then the number.
However, no one has home
Huh.
phones like anymore. I don't know
Yeah,
anyone
no,
my age that
Yeah.
has a home phone.
I
like
have
they're
no
gone.
home phones
Same here.
programmed into
We
my.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
landlines
anymore.
are completely
Yeah, gone.
yeah abysmal.
So
Um,
then
But,
the
which
mobile
is
number
interesting
is.
because
Sorry, no, you go.
I was just gonna say landlines, interestingly enough, will work if there's a power outage.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
yeah.
if
Yeah.
if your phone's dead,
Yeah.
and but then again, like because like if your phone's dead and the power is out,
Yeah.
you can't call anyone.
Yeah.
If you have a landline, you can, but who are you gonna call? Because no one's got a landline.
No one's
Yeah.
got a damn line. Yeah, landline.
If we can go back to cops real quick, though.
Yeah, go back to that. It was a complete segue
Yeah.
from.
The only times I've ever called the police are times when there was like a car accident that I was involved in, because in America, to get an insurance claim filed, there has to be a
Yeah,
police
same
report.
here. Same here.
So in that instance, I've called the cops. I've been in a couple accidents, nothing major, but and then the only other time is when I'm at work. So like working in the service industry, working in restaurants. I worked a couple of different places overnight shifts. So you get drunk
not
people
the same.
coming in, because like our bars close at 2:00 in Michigan. So someone will come in all drunk
4
and
o'clock in New
like
York.
see somebody they don't like and start a fight with them. And if they don't leave immediately, then I'll start by telling them, if you guys don't leave, I'm going to have to call the cops. And then if they don't leave, then I will call the cops and then tell them, hey, the cops are on their way. I just called them. And usually they just leave before the cops get there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are the only experiences that I've had where I've called the police. I have strong feelings about police and not wanting to call them, because I feel like a lot of the time they cause a lot more issues than they help with. But again, that can be a conversation for a different time.
Yeah,
And
don't worry, you got
I
your
don't.
Second Amendment there. You can keep
Yeah.
your shotgun if they come. Those tyrannical
Yeah.
government comes, man. You
Well,
got that.
and
That's
so
right.
I mean, actually, that kind of that and the NRA kind of tie back together, because like in the 60s, a lot of black people would carry around rifles. Like there was a movement where people started carrying around rifles, and if they saw another person of color getting harassed by the police, they would just stand there with their weapons perfectly legally. And if something got out of hand, they were able to do something about it. Never, I don't know of any instances where like there was a big firefight between people of color and cops, like as a result of that. But like with the Black Panther Party, that's what they did, was they followed people, or they followed cops around, or they just like stayed in their area and just were present with firearms.
Just
and that's
to
a
be,
situation
like,
where
a
you
deterrent to the
could,
cops, where the cops go,
Right.
okay, I need to be a bit more careful and be aware that I'm not
And so-
mistreating this person.
like, well, I can't take on the military by myself. That might be a situation where that could potentially be a valid argument, where people are just being harassed by the police and they need to do something about it because nobody else is. So I don't know. There's, I guess, in some small way there is some validity to it. I just don't think it's enough to justify the laws that we have. But
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, 100%. You put on here vets about like the prison, the privatization of prisons, and I was just thinking about that while you were talking about the police and how they cause more trouble than they're worth and that kind of thing.
So, a lot of different systems are becoming privatized. So like healthcare is, I believe, always been private, or at least largely private in the States, aside from things like Medicaid, Medicare, which again are still like, it's the government paying a private company to treat you medically. So that is a little bit different, and we're trying, there's a bit of a push to go in the other direction for that now. But at the same time, prisons are largely being allowed, and I think it's, is it federal or is it just state? I can't remember right now, but I believe it's state prisons are allowed to be contracted out. So like there's a company that will build a prison, and then they have a contract with the state saying this many beds will be filled, like as an estimate basically, and that makes it a viable thing for this private company to actually run this institution where people are just in prison. But the problem with that is, and I don't know exactly why that became a thing, but the problem with that I see is that gives the government an incentive to lock people up, because there's also usually a clause in there that says if we're not at 80% capacity, then the government will pay us X amount of dollars above and beyond what we'd make if we were full, as like a penalty fee almost. But it's just, again, it's insurance to make sure that the company that's running the prison is still making money off of it, or still at least viable, instead of just like losing money like crazy. But because you have to have X amount of people in this prison, laws get changed or enforced differently or whatever, and target specific groups of people, and then all of a sudden everything is more strict and laws are being enforced differently, and then this prison fills up. So then what happens is that private company or some other private company will make another prison which has the same contract. So it's a snowball effect whereby like people are more and more getting, I guess to a greater and greater extent, getting imprisoned for a profit. And it boggles my mind that that is a situation that we find ourselves in. But
Yeah. Is
yeah.
it also like, I've seen this in a couple of like movies kind of thing, where like the prisons, they like get the prisoners like working and stuff like that as well,
yeah,
and like
yep,
and make and turn a profit that way as well through
yeah,
products made and stuff like that. Like, so it's
yep.
almost like
Here,
like
actually,
it's almost like slavery, right?
essentially, yeah.
Or do they earn money? Do the prisoners earn money on
No,
their work?
they don't. I
Wow.
mean, they might earn like cents on the dollar
Mm.
compared to what somebody else on the outside would make, but they essentially that has to be paid for them to stay in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So like
Sounds
you
a
owe
bit
a
like
bunch
the
of money when you
NCAA.
leave. I was gonna look up. What do prison workers
So
do?
most of the time, and obviously we don't know about your own specific contracts, but most of the time you have what's called a take or pay contract. So basically that will guarantee them a certain, I guess, baseline revenue stream. So if you're saying like, for instance, like an 80%, whatever the word is, occupancy rate,
Yeah,
and generally that would mean if it's 70% occupied, then they're still fulfilling the 80% revenue. So there'll be like a baseline revenue that the government will guarantee them, so that that company will, but they won't normally be paying in excess of the 100%, like you said, just because
yeah,
they're
and
below capacity. So
I don't know how prevalent that is, but it is a thing that does
Mm.
exist, and that in and of itself, I think, is problematic.
yeah,
Because it is a penalty above and beyond what they would normally be paying. So it just creates such a strong incentive to put more people in there, and that's not what we should be doing.
so we have in Australia, apparently we
I don't know much
have
about it.
our prisons overfull in some ways. So in a lot of ways, what we hear is that they are, I guess, releasing people without what's the word, jail time or sentencing or like appropriate sentencing, because we just don't have the capacity for them. So a lot of the times we'll have like a range, like I don't know, 5 to 10 years, and we're always having to go at the bottom end of the range because we just have a capacity issue. And so we end up having a lot of people probably
Who should
fulfill,
be punished more.
yeah, should have a jail sentence, but they end up getting
Right.
suspended sentence or something along those lines because
Right.
we physically can't fit them in. And there's both good and bad parts about that. I guess you're having the issue where they're potentially a bit overzealous, is what you're
Yeah.
saying, and we're
Yeah.
probably at the other end of that spectrum where we can't afford, in some cases, to apply the law probably to its effect that it was designed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that may be part of what caused us to go the route that we did, because there was like that was an issue here too, and I think to some extent it still is, which is again mind-boggling because there is this other industry which is stepping in and saying we'll shoulder the burden here, but still there in certain areas at least there's still overcrowding issues.
Yeah. Is that
So
yeah. We actually we don't have a lot of things that are like privatized over here in terms of like public services, right? Like I know that Telstra used to be, I know that from what I know, Telstra used to be a government
Yeah. So
owned.
Telstra is our like our main. Well, now it's our main
Telco.
telecommunications company in Australia. So that used to be like a government entity, and has since been privatized. Yeah.
Yeah. And then is the NBN private?
Government.
The NBN is government.
The NBN and government. Okay, cool. Yeah, but we don't have a lot of like our
They've
I
been
feel
selling
like-
off a lot of utilities and things like that.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know a lot about it.
We have some
Uh,
like government regulated utilities, but not government run utilities, which is
Yeah.
an interesting world too to live in.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Sorry.
So like General Electric, let's say, or like Consumers Energy is actually like that's the company that provides my electricity and my gas for my heat.
Mhm.
So that is a private entity, but it's heavily regulated by the government because it's the only company that has the infrastructure to provide those things.
Okay.
So there's no competition there. It's a monopoly.
Mm.
But there are just laws that are put in place to say, okay, you can still operate and you can make money, but it's going to be real strict because you're the only ones who can do this, and people need this stuff.
I assume that ours
Yeah.
is like Western Power, and that is the same. I'm not 100%.
So, well, for gas, we actually have exactly the same arrangement.
Yeah.
I think the French, I think they're French. A company called Atco owns a large portion of our gas pipeline network in Perth. And so the government literally says, I can't remember the number, but you can make, I think it's about $180 million revenue per year.
That's it.
And that's
that's
what
it.
we've decided you're allowed.
Interesting.
So
Wow.
we don't really care how you charge customers that, as long as you do it on an equitable basis, and that's how much you can make. And then that we'll revise the contract in 4 years or something like that. So it's exactly the same as what Evets said. It's a government regulated thing because they essentially have a monopoly over public infrastructure.
I'm assuming that fuel is similar as well, right? Because like people need fuel, like, and the price doesn't fluctuate that much.
You talking like
fluctuates
automotive
30
fuel?
cents a
Yeah.
week.
You guys call it gas.
Yeah,
Yep.
gasoline. I'm familiar with petrol too. But
Sorry, yeah.
Gas, petrol or gasoline or whatever we're going to call it is not the same
I didn't think so. There's enough companies.
because there's more than one competitor in
Yeah.
the market. And there's no, because the difference is that we're talking about infrastructure versus supply, and they're a bit different.
yeah.
I assume
Yeah.
we import a lot of it too.
Cool.
So I did look up just because I was curious. Prison workers, like prisoners who are working. I'm just reading this straight from a Newsweek article, but some prisoners in 8 states, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Texas, are not paid at all for their labor in government-run facilities. And then the national average receiving the least compensation for their maintenance. Sorry, it keeps jumping up and down because ads appear. The national average for inmates receiving the least compensation for their maintenance work in these prisons is 14 cents per hour. And the countrywide average for those receiving the most for the same type of labor is 63 cents per hour.
I was gonna say.
So like they might get paid, but they're not getting paid. Like
Yeah,
it's
right.
it's
Those are pretty
just so
wacky
we can say
stats,
it's
though.
not totally
The
free.
average for the most. What does that even mean?
Well, it's
but
what
it
it's
doesn't
saying
matter.
is the
The range
average
is bad.
the average for the range is 14 to 63 cents.
yeah,
basically,
it's bad
is what
either
it's
way, but the stats atrocious.
saying.
Trust the
also
accountant.
inmates in Minnesota and New Jersey can receive the highest hourly rate for prison maintenance jobs, which is $2 per hour. So like top line, most you could possibly make is $2 an hour
Well,
Right.
there you go.
in
Go
government run
Timberwolves.
facilities. I don't know exactly what
Good deal.
the
Good deal.
breakdown is in privately run ones, but
Okay.
so yeah, it's not just the thing in the movie. Like I don't know if they necessarily stamp license plates anymore, but they used to.
Yeah.
Man, I can't believe Minnesota pays Andrew Wiggins $30 million a year. That is criminal, man.
Lock him up.
All right, there was one more topic that I really wanted to ask you guys, and I see it as Australian. Well, I see Australia in one sense, and then America heading in a very similar direction, and that was around immigration. So I'll try and explain it properly the first time. So, like my take on it is that we have super harsh immigration laws in Australia. And I see, your presence like retweeting things that are like, well, much can be learned from this policy. which is even harsher than yours. And then I feel like, and I've talked about this with Porkins, if I could make an argument, firstly economically, and secondly ethically, like saving lives, for the increase of immigration, why can't the conversation be, instead of how much can we keep out, and then why can't it be like the conversation be around more like, can we negate the negative effects of this while we let in and process as many people as we possibly can and increase the positive effects of it?
And by immigration, you don't mean immigration, right? You mean refugees.
No, both.
Okay, because they're
Yeah.
very different.
But still, I would still say, I still would argue for both in the same way. I mean, like I said, economic migrants and refugees, I'd still argue both of them.
So
you go. Sorry.
Okay. So interestingly enough, I want to say it was the Trump administration did a study to see how much of a drain immigrants are, and I don't remember if it was immigrants, illegal aliens, or refugees specifically, but it was one of those groups. I want to say it was illegal aliens, like people who enter the country. And this study, after it was done, was kind of like swept under the rug because they found out that we actually, like, they generate more revenue than they take away.
All
'Cause they're
economists
not-
will agree on that.
They're not a drain on the public systems
I shouldn't
because
say all. Yeah.
they're not allowed to take advantage of a lot of them. So like they can't be a drain on that system. And then a lot of them will go, like, especially like we call them dreamers. People who are first generation, or like who were brought here when they were like 1 or 2 years old or whatever. They are still technically illegal immigrants, but some of them don't even know that until like 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
Or whatever age, but they contribute to American society just as much, and the economic growth just as much or more than people who live here and are citizens. So I think there's something to be said for that argument that you're saying, is like, how can we offset it, and can we possibly benefit from bringing more people in?
It seems like in the short term, there's going to be costs, obviously. And I was actually saying this to Porkins. We took this ridiculously long drive home because all the roads were shut. We have like I don't know what you guys call it in America, but we have a freeway, which is like, we have like one main road basically that goes through
Highway.
Do you guys call it highways? But we have like one of those.
Well,
in Perth,
we have
right?
freeways, expressways, and highways.
I'm sure you have way more than us. We have one, and if an exit, if one of the like exit things is blocked off, and like and so we had to like drive, I don't know, like maybe drive back like 20 Ks round trip, or no, maybe not that far, maybe 15. But anyway, we had a good talk about it, and I was Flip, I can't even remember what I was talking about now.
We're talking about the
short
long
term
chat we had on the long drive.
but short term, and I feel like maybe this is why. So if a government understood that in the long run, like I'm going to say most economists do understand that it's immigration is a really positive thing for your country economically. But there's a huge cost initially. Our governments are running like 3-year systems, so it's really hard for them to justify a short-term expenditure of money, because then they're like, oh, we're in a budget deficit, no one's going to vote for us next time. I don't know if that makes sense, but feels like maybe that's the one.
How long are the terms for like the people who run your government? I don't know if you Congress or like Parliament or what.
Is it 3
Parliament,
years?
Parliament? Okay.
Porkins will know.
I don't know. I thought it was 4, but
okay,
I
sorry.
think it's 4.
Maybe it's
okay.
I feel like after
so
3 they can call an election. Sorry.
We have
there's some sort of like
Oh.
6-month period they can decide to call an election within.
We have 2 parts of Congress. We've got the House of Representatives, and people in the House of Representatives are representatives for 2 years, or their term lasts for 2 years, and then for the Senate it's 6 years. So again, like the Senate is one of the longer terms in like our government, generally speaking. But yeah, I can see why, like, if you guys have the same thing going on over there, why people wouldn't be excited to do something in the short term, because an election is coming up and they have to get elected. So
No, it's 3.
3.
3?
Yeah.
It's 3.
Okay.
It's 3
Yeah.
and 6.
So they're
Three
they're worried
insects.
about creating that budget deficit within the short term rather than, and I suppose a lot of things are that way. At least that's what it
Yeah.
seems like to me. I don't really understand why we have this ridiculously hardline policy.
So I felt a bit because I mean it's a bit different, obviously having a chat on and having a chat in the car on
Yeah.
a massive detour on the way home. But I felt a bit undercooked on this, so I actually had a look into some stats.
Mm.
Oh,
And
here
we
we go.
take 160,000 between 160 and 190, depending on the year,
Mm.
like economic immigrants every year,
Mm.
and then between 15 and 20,000 refugees.
Mm.
Okay.
What
And
does taking the
apparently,
refugees mean though?
as in
Allowing
giving
them
them
in?
residency, I believe.
Okay.
And they reckon that, and and once again, this is just some reading I did this afternoon. They reckon that the majority of these come on tourist visas and then apply for refugee when they're here.
Yeah, right.
And so, I don't have a. So I guess this is why I said before that there's a bit of a difference between kind of immigrant and refugee, because in Australia we took this very hardline policy to, if you arrive to our country by boat, as in like attempt to get across our border by boat because we have these huge oceans between us. Then we took this hardline policy that we will not let you settle in our country, and there was a couple of reasons for that, and one of them is obviously they don't want illegal immigration, but the other one is a lot of people are drowning in the ocean. So there's kind of both ways because they're arriving on these boats from, so
and then and then I was saying they should make it easier for people to come in. That's why it's hard. It's very
so
hard.
I
For people
think
to
what
get
they're
here.
saying is like people are getting here via planes on tourist visas, and then taking the refugee status, and then I guess the counter argument to that is if you're a true refugee, maybe you can't afford the plane.
Yeah, definitely.
But basically, the reason that I thought there might be a distinction here is because we take a lot of immigrants, like economic immigrants, but we have taken a really hardline policy on
refugees
people trying to reach our country via boat, and there's been, I would say, unequivocally some human rights travesties that have happened after that with our detaining of them. So
yeah, but it's like the opposite to what I was saying. It's human rights travesties, and it costs us ridiculous amounts of money. It's like
it costs us staggering amounts of money.
It's absolutely. like $500,000 per year per person, to hold them in an offshore detention center. That's a ridiculous amount of money. It's crazy.
Well, and the same thing is going on here now with detention centers that we have set up. I think can't remember the figure. I think it's like $7,000 or $8,000 a day per person.
Yeah.
And like, there's all these people who are saying, "Oh, well, if you're so sorry for the refugees, why don't you just put them up?" Well, I saw a meme about this very thing. It was just like, if I could get $7,000 a day to put somebody up in my house who's coming from like a really terrible place that they can't survive anymore, send them my way. I won't do anything else. Like, I'll just hang out with them all the time. That's like what 300 times that is like probably close to 3 million a year.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so much money.
What are we even talking about here?
So
anyway,
what I know you. So you're saying like take as much as we can, right? Or like increase the number of people that we can take. But what is that number? What is that number before we're not a nation anymore and we're completely open borders society where people come and go as they please? And why do we have borders in the first place? Why is the whole world not open borders? It's because of security and it's because of limited resources.
Quality of life.
Yeah. And so I get that. I definitely am in the camp of more immigration. I like living in a multicultural society with the more voices, the better, the more differing opinions and whatever. I think it just adds to it, but there's got to be a limit. I think because then what would happen is if we were all open border societies, half of the world would be unpopulated because everybody would just flock to the best places to live.
Right.
Yes and no. I think there's a lot of what's the word? Like cultural bonds that keeps people together. Like there's parts of the world that yeah, they don't have, I guess, in inverted commas, that first world lifestyle, but they don't want to leave because of what they have there, if you know what I mean. So definitely there would be migration, but there are also things that would retain a population in parts of the world that we might not see as ideal.
Yeah, and then like people. So I'm a relatively big believer in capitalism in a way, like, or at least that these things come out in the wash. So we're like pretty wealthy, and we have the means to make ourselves very wealthy. And if we took on more people and they increased the overall wealth of our country, and if we if we didn't, that's gonna be a quality of life increase, I think, to an extent. Like we are so underpopulated in Australia for our size. But if you didn't want to live in a super populated place, then you could also move to we could move to places that have got less population along the similar lifestyle.
So, yeah, but then, so are you for complete immigration? Like
open borders.
Are you for open borders?
Haven't thought about it enough, but I'm definitely for the conversation being mass increase and trying to negate the negative effects of that, rather than the conversation being about let's stop all of the immigration, which it seems to always be about.
What are the negative effects of immigration?
Like the short-term effects, and I know that the job situation isn't a zero-sum equation, but low-skilled workers come in and take the low-skilled Australian workers' jobs, etc.
But if they're here, then they are Australian.
Yeah, yeah, and in the long run,
they have as much right to it as anyone.
Yeah, and in the long run, it's very good for the economy. Like that increases the amount of jobs. That's why it's not a zero-sum equation. But telling that to somebody, it's not a negative,
right?
Well, but I mean, telling that to a low-skilled worker, they'd see that as negative if they're losing their job.
I mean, it could be argued that it is a negative effect because it creates more competition in that job market. So whether or not like they're considered Australians at that point, like let's say they are because they have come in and become citizens or whatever, that still means there are more people fighting for the same jobs. But then again, that is an argument here, and most of the people who come in and take those jobs are taking jobs that people who work or who live here don't want. Perfect example. There are a lot of migrant workers who are like seasonal workers who will come up. I don't know if it's as true anymore, like in present day, but like 5 years ago, there were a lot of people who would come up and do like seasonal harvesting work. And like California is one example, where people would come up from Mexico, they would go to California, they would work, they would take that money and go back home and like give that to their family and help support them. And so in some sense, like there's an economic strain there because they're taking money from our economy and taking it back home. But like it's such a minuscule amount. Like I don't consider that to be a huge strain, especially considering the good that they're doing. So now that all of these hardline immigration policies are being enforced here the way they are, I listened to a story on NPR recently that was talking about how like they're like speaking with a farmer in California, there are literally not enough people who are willing to do that work. So there are sections of farmland that are just not.
Do you say in California?
Harvest. Yeah,
that's hectic.
In general too.
Wow.
I mean, Michigan has migrant workers who come up too, like for blueberries and cherries and apples and stuff like that. And I don't know. The reason I bring up California is because that's where the person in the news story I was listening to was from.
Yeah, but, I mean, Cali has like, a ridiculous amount of migrants, and a whole lot of them illegal as well. But their economy's great.
But literally, without these migrants coming in, there's no one to do the work. So I feel like that argument can, no one who wants to, no one who's willing to. So I feel like that argument is, I don't know. I don't know what it's like in Australia, and it depends on what specifically you're talking about in the US, but I don't know that it necessarily holds as much water as some people are trying to shove into that bucket.
No. And then people go the other way where they say, yeah, but then you're exploiting these people because they work for a lower wage. But I mean, if they're coming here, they're economic migrants. They're coming from something worse, obviously.
Right.
Well, one thing I've always heard is if you lose your job to someone who can't speak English, you probably didn't deserve your job.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a culture of fear. Well, no, not a bit. Like I think that governments can use it and people can use a culture of fear to stop these conversations from saying it's possible to have a net positive from increasing the amount of I think it's always going to be a net positive from increasing the amount of immigration. Why can't we then just try and tip the scales further and further to being more and more positive?
So I think there's probably in Australia we have a slightly different what's the word? A lot of our wealth, and this is both a good and a bad thing for our country, but a large portion of our wealth is derived from natural resources, and that bringing more people into the country will, like on a, I don't know how you want to say this, but on an allocation level, may actually dilute the wealth per capita, because like we don't have other markets like in Silicon Valley or something, which is I guess a self-sustaining industry, or banking or things like that. This is literally just we get a certain amount of money out of the ground, and that has to go across everyone. And that has a large benefits for our country because we're like quite wealthy, and that does kind of flow down the economy, even though only whatever it is 5% of people actually get access to that wealth. When they start spending it, obviously it kind of washes through our economy. But then like especially guys in America probably don't know this, but it's made like a really big, what they call here like a 2-speed economy, where you have people with a lot of money, the cost of living's gone up, but not everyone else is going with it. So it's become like a really hard lifestyle to live in for some people, because of like the inflation and the cost of living has gone up so much, but I guess the income isn't being evenly distributed across the population.
So do you guys have thought, we don't have to go too deep into this, but do you guys have thoughts about like wealth disparity and wealth redistribution and things like that?
So
It got real
like
quiet.
a bit. No, I definitely have heaps. But how much do we want to go into? Because like Porkins was saying, we've got this maybe a level of people who are not at the education or the what would you say, the circumstance to be able to reach that that second road. So I'm like I think the term is a social democrat, where I think that a free market is brilliant and that seems to produce a lot of wealth for a country. However, I do believe that a lot of stuff like education and healthcare in particular should be subsidized and made more social, I guess, so that people can then participate in that free market, because people are down there and they're struggling and they just need to get into that market to help the country, to help everyone. So that's kind of where I am. I don't know about the terms so much, but I think that's where I'm anyway.
Okay.
So that probably circles back in some ways, I guess, to our college or university chat we're having before. And that
Yeah.
Everyone has access to all levels of education, I guess, like primary, secondary, and tertiary education, and there's no liability to pay that back imminently, if that makes sense. So if you kind of get access to tertiary education, then you don't have to pay that back until you earn sufficiently to kind of carry that burden. So we do have, I guess, steps of that in place in Australia, which Fresh and I also spoke about on that car ride.
That fateful car ride.
It's road construction season in Michigan too right now. So we have winter and we have road construction.
But do you guys have more than one main road?
2 seasons we had.
Oh yeah.
Yes, but somehow all of them seem to get blocked off, and only one of them maybe is getting worked on at a time.
Damn.
Right.
and all of them are still covered with potholes all the time. I don't know, whatever.
Back to redistribution of wealth. Sorry, I like the potholes and the long drive. But we actually had this really interesting thing happen recently, which we were talking about, Porkins, which I think it was mainly a vote grab, right? The government who came in, but they basically they flattened out a lot of the tax brackets, and then there's promise to flatten it out even further. So like I got like just a random $1,000 back at my tax return, and they're like, "'Cause you're in the high wage gap thing here, you get this much money," and so on. And I was like that's so weird. I know that they're getting the votes from the people because they want more money, obviously. But I'm definitely more of a fan of a steeper gradient of taxation than something like that.
Yeah. Well, how far do we want to? We have some
Oh,
like
yeah.
weird macroeconomic factors in Australia at the moment.
Yeah, I
they
guess
were
so. Was it? Do
just
you
trying
think
to stimulate the economy without touching the interest rates, but then they did the interest rates as well.
is
and
that what it
so,
was? Like because the interest rates are so low, they're just like people need to spend more money.
Yeah,
That-
that was why
okay.
they gave us the free kick, and it just happened to coincide with an election. So
Okay.
you be the
That makes
judge.
more sense. That makes more sense.
but-
Yeah, it just seems that
Um,
plenty of people could have used that money who was poor.
Yeah, potentially. I really want to talk about the amount of dangerous animals comparison between the US and
Okay,
Australia.
I'm down for this.
Not to like move on to something that's just like ridiculously not deep at all.
No, that's fine.
but
I was just starting my macroeconomic talk. Man.
I
you
was
threw that
feeling-
bird out there.
and I
like-
was feeling completely outstripped, and I was just like, you know what's terrifying?
Bears
Bears.
beats Battlestar Galactica.
Bears beats
Bears.
Bears and wolves. They are terrifying. And people
Mhm.
always accuse Australia of having heaps of dangerous animals because we've got
Yeah.
like tiny bugs, spiders, and snakes that are like.
So
these
what's the
tiny little
most
creatures.
dangerous? Yeah, most dangerous animal that you guys have there.
You also have kangaroos,
Uh,
which will fuck you up. I've heard.
Yeah, big red kangaroos definitely can mess you up.
Oh
but,
my gosh.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know the stats on what kills the most, but like we've got
No, but like
what have we got?
scariest.
We've got
So we got-
sharks. They're pretty
Oh
terrifying.
yeah, we got sharks,
But like you guys have
spiders,
sharks
and
as well,
snakes. That
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Right.
Sharks, crocodiles, spiders, snakes.
Yeah.
crocodiles. But like you guys have
Drop bears.
alligators.
We have
You
alligators.
guys not
yeah,
have bears?
we don't have
We
bears.
do not have bears.
We
and
have
do not
drop
have
bears.
wolves.
Drop bears.
Wolves?
Do you-
We do-
Well, do you have anything that's like mammal-wise that's bigger than
I was actually
dingo?
trying to think
like,
about that.
Predator-wise?
No, the
No.
difference
No,
between your
that's-
country and ours is you won't see ours coming, but you'll still die.
Yeah. Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, but like for me, the idea, like a bear and like probably a wolf pack as well are like sharks, but they're on land as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know?
pretty much.
So like,
Yeah.
How
I
about
don't know.
snakes? Like, I mean, I'm sure you guys have snakes, right?
we got pretty bad snakes.
Unless you're like really remote, dying from a snake bite is becoming
True. Less and less common. But people do get
I
bitten
mean,
by
that's-
deadly
shoot.
snakes very often here.
Snake bites are real.
I'm about to
though.
say you guys
To
have
be
like
fair-
rattlesnakes and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
you guys got
No.
rattlesnakes.
We've got
Yeah.
I
Unless
think
you're
ours are
really
worse than
remote,
rattlesnakes,
you're not
right?
going to run into a bear or a wolf either.
No.
Yeah,
No.
in certain regions we do.
Like,
We have
wear some-
rattlesnakes.
Wear some thick boots and like a couple of the right
Couple
pants.
of pairs of
and
socks.
you're not going to get
Yeah.
a snake bite. Pretty
well,
much walking
snake bites are
through.
very
We-
common, but people dying is very uncommon these
Yeah.
days.
They
Yeah.
they
So
got
if I-
there's
Yeah.
like a anti-venom, like a general anti-venom now, pretty much for pretty much all snake bites
Mm.
that can be administered.
So
to
you don't even have to
counteract it,
know
and
necessarily
Mm.
what.
what
But you've only
kind
got
of-
like
what-
40 minutes for something.
Yeah, but unless you're like ridiculously remote, like
People have,
ambos and stuff like that have
yeah.
can administer snake anti-venom and stuff like that. Like it's very rare. It's very rare.
Yeah. I think we increased a lot of awareness around how to deal with them, and that helped heaps. And then people, I think I don't know, about 40 minutes. That seems very short because I've heard plenty of stories of people who've survived.
It
like,
depends
a
on
long
the snake.
time.
But don't we
So-
have like
Oh, yeah.
5 of the top 7 most poisonous snakes in the world? or
Look,
something?
and I think that's why we
Yeah, we
get a
do.
bad rap.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is everybody should be
Bears.
terrified of America.
But what about now? Do you guys have like
Get a bad rap.
like lions? Do you have like mountain lions
Nope,
or
no-
cougars
nothing.
or anything? like
A
that?
dingo is like the size of like
a dog.
a
big dog.
A
Dog,
a
yeah,
big
yeah,
dog.
big
A big dog, not a massive dog.
Probably the
but,
size
like,
of your
it's-
guys' dogs, actually, and that's our
Yeah,
biggest.
that's a dingo.
I don't think people died of
And-
dingoes,
Alright,
though.
so
I don't.
no
I've
wolves,
heard of them.
coyotes. or-
I
No,
know.
no wolves.
Dingo ate my baby.
Yeah, dingo stole my baby.
Sorry, I couldn't not.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
couldn't
that's
not.
true. A baby once
that
died
one,
to a dingo.
That one story.
That one time.
Actually didn't happen. Maybe she murdered her kid.
What do you mean? Are
Right.
you kidding? Wait, surely you're memeing about that? Like that she killed her kid?
No,
No.
didn't she get? That was actually what
Like
happened.
that's
Or
what they
she got-
thought, but no. A dingo definitely killed her baby, but everyone
No,
because
no,
she's
no,
a
no,
crazy
no, no,
person.
no.
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 Ah,
Are we talking
It
about the
was
Chamberlain lady?
speculation.
There's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
way. No way. They ended up proving it. She definitely didn't kill her kid in the end. But everyone thought she did, 100%.
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But
Yeah,
someone's
I don't-
watching.
I-
the-
I'm gonna go look this
someone's
up.
watching Michael Moore.
Oh
I'm
my
gonna go
gosh.
look this up now. Yeah, but yeah, I just wanted to touch on it.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel like Australia wins when it comes to dangerous animals. Everybody should come here and get away from those bears.
Yeah, winning meaning you have the safest,
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
not the
winning,
most dangerous.
not the most
Definitely
dangerous.
not the least scary.
Yeah,
But
but for some
also,
reason
like-
we have a really bad rap for it.
Yeah.
You bring up bears, but like you're not going to run into a bear unless you're in a really location. Generally speaking.
I've seen The
Yeah,
Revenant.
generally.
Leonardo DiCaprio got pretty messed up by that.
Yeah,
Very
and he wasn't in a city center.
Right? No, he was. Yeah.
I think that just comes down to no, I guess somebody brought this
Snakes
up.
on a
We
plane.
have about the same.
Snakes on a plane.
That's got
Snakes on
the
a
best. The best. Oh shoot, what's the word? Edited for like TV.
plane. Oh yeah.
The best dub. It's
Yeah.
got the best dub ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've had it with these monkey fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane.
Yeah.
I saw that on TV and just lost it.
That's
It
so
was the
funny.
best.
Monday to Friday.
Yeah, well, like
but-
there's I know I've been told by someone who was like, yeah, like if I'm going for a hike, I take a gun that can stop a bear because he's like he lives in an area. Obviously, I know I'm being generalizing.
Yeah,
America
but
here. I know there's bears with there's parts with bears, parts with not. He lives in an area where there's bears. He wants to go for
Yeah.
a hike. He takes a fucking gun.
Yeah.
A bear
Mate,
stopping
they take
gun.
guns everywhere. What are you talking about?
What is that? Like an SMG?
I don't know. He's like
No,
it's a
Probably
gun-
great
it's a
that-
gun that
to be
can-
honest.
Honestly, that wouldn't do it.
AR-15.
Yeah, I meant to say LMG.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
That would do it.
and like bear spray and like all this stuff and like
I would say bear spray is more common for protection than
Yeah.
guns.
Jeez, imagine
And
a
it's like,
bear running at you and
believe
be
it or
like,
not, they-
"Tss," like what? What?
No, but believe it or not, you're not supposed to like be scared. You're supposed to
Yeah.
be bigger and
Yeah.
badder than the bear. I mean, not that you're not going to be shitting your pants the whole time, like,
Yeah.
oh my god, there's a bear really nearby. But you're supposed to just act normal. And
Well, I mean,
they-
even just taking. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
no, you're
ahead.
fine. No, you're fine. I was in an area where camping, and they're like, yeah, well, bear just had cubs nearby, so just giving you that warning. I'm like, great.
Mm.
Any chance
Yeah.
to get the campsite that is furthest from the bear den would be good. But they're like, if you see them, just I don't know,
Just
get
stay
big,
away.
make a lot of noise, just make sure that they are aware that you were there, and keep on moving. I'm
Once
like,
again, a case of the tall
yeah,
people
no.
having an advantage in life. And I'm stuck here.
supposedly.
I'll be the one who
Listen,
dies, and you guys are all just like,
if a
"Yep,
bear
we're
wants to hunt me down,
good."
I'm not gonna fight
Fresh,
it. I'm
fresh. I'll
gonna
just
fight
put you on my shoulders.
That's why it's
Take
like-
a
Yeah,
big
sounds
old
good.
bear hug and die.
that's why it's become commonplace and that's why it's accepted to call people out on how tall they are
Yeah,
because it's a privilege.
It's a privilege,
You know,
yeah.
we're-
Do you play
we're- yeah.
basketball? Surely you play basketball. It's a
Yeah.
privilege.
Only basketball. There's no
Everyone's-
other sports.
everyone's jealous.
That's all people
So-
can play.
Similar to Roxy's story, I was on a camping trip, but this was like it was not a predator at all. But are you
Doesn't
guys
feel
like
like-
familiar with the size of a moose?
Yeah, they're huge. They're like a giant horse, like
Yeah.
giant.
Yeah. So I went to the only national park in Michigan. We have a bunch of state parks, but it's an island which is in the middle of Lake Superior, and it's called Isle Royal. And the two big animals that live there are moose and wolves. Neither of which are indigenous to the island, but both of which live there now.
What's the plural of moose? Is it moose or is it meese?
It's
Mooses?
it's moose.
Mooses.
Moose.
Meese?
It's just moose.
Moose.
You
Just
don't
moose.
change it.
Wait, so it
Nice.
goes to one moose, two moose.
Moose.
2 moose, 3
Alright.
moose. Yes.
You know what a weird
Four
one is?
mooses.
Well,
It's
what about
definitely got to go to mooses.
one sheep, two sheeps? No, you just say
Like
sheep.
meese.
So
Sheep,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
or
Similar
deer.
to deer as well.
Anyway,
Sorry.
so I went
Yeah.
on this camping trip, and the first night we were like backpacking across the island. But the first night we were there, we were staying in like the main campsite, and that night we saw a cow moose wandering around with her calf.
All right.
And I mean, the calf was probably like at least 300 or 400 pounds. Like they're not small animals.
Wow. Wow.
But this thing was like the two of them were just kind of wandering through the campsites, and we just didn't do anything. We just let them do their thing, and we didn't pay any, like, we watched them, but we didn't pay them any special attention. Just like kept an eye on them. But I woke up the next morning, and like 7 o'clock in the morning, like sun was coming up, kind of thing. And I stuck my head out of my tent, and about a foot away from my face was this cow moose's snout.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like coming over to check our campsite out a little bit closer. And like, this thing was bigger than the tent that my mom, my brother, and I were all sleeping in.
Yeah.
So like,
That's
it doesn't
epic.
even have to be a predator for it to be terrifying, especially like Roxy was saying, like it had a calf, that bear had cubs recently. Like,
Dang.
just stay away if you can, and if you can't, just don't antagonize it.
You're making more and more of a
And
case.
don't
I
leave
feel like we
food in
win.
your tent. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
You just-
I think
in
as far
other
as
words- in
dangerous
other words,
animals,
we
Dangerous
win.
animals.
I think-
we,
yeah.
guys, we got less. We win. We win.
Everybody, come here for holidays.
Come here for holidays. Yay. Immigrate
support our
here.
economy.
Immigration.
But
Migrate.
don't you
refugees.
guys have a lot less animals generally speaking, because a lot of it's just desert?
Yeah. I think that's why we have dangerous ones, because the ones that survive in that place are like, geez, you
Are
gotta be
super-
hardy.
Yeah. Yeah, they're-
I feel like anything. Yeah. Okay. No, I'll grant you that.
Okay, so I do have a question. This would
Yeah.
be very, very stereotypical. What about kangaroos? Talk to us about kangaroos, please.
Like, they're fine. Like, so kangaroo meat is amazing. I mean,
How
personally,
often
I
are
really like it.
I want stats. I want the amount that you'll see on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. In what areas?
Okay. So,
I
Yeah,
need to
well-
know. Are they like us, where you see a deer just running across the street? You see like a
Yeah.
kangaroo hopping across
Yeah.
the
Do you have to
road?
like swerve to avoid them with your
yeah,
car?
they're really bad at, like, yeah, they're like
really
deers. They
stumpy.
go
They're
into
like
the
deers,
car. Yeah. And the kangaroos are
kangaroo
worse
in
too,
the
because they
headlights.
jump and they just through the windshield.
Little
But,
front.
Oh, jeez.
Porkins. So I feel like in terms of, I feel like Woke would never see them on a daily basis. Would that be true, Woke?
Never.
And Porkins would see them more than I would. Would that be true? How many do you reckon you see one a day?
If I was going to work, I
Yeah.
would not see one.
True,
But
true.
if I was going 5 minutes from my house, I could see 50 if
Yeah.
I
Okay.
wanted to.
Yeah. There you go.
So,
Whereas I would
yeah,
see one a
gosh.
week, maybe.
yeah.
yeah.
But I have
Wow.
to go there. But yeah, in our like parks in our area,
Mm.
they're very easy to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Parks is probably a weird term. Like in
Yeah.
our
In our forest land.
So
But,
whereabouts
like,
in
local
relation to each other
bushland.
do you guys live?
Local
like
bushland.
north,
Um,
south, east, west Australia?
so
to put it
I'm-
very generic. Like
So
generally.
we all live in, all three of us live in Perth. We know each other IRL. So we're probably about 20 minutes drive away from each other.
Mm.
Yeah. Woke
So-
lives in like an urban hipster environment.
Hence the
And
ginger
then-
beard.
Fresh lives kind of
Hey
near
now.
the water, and I live kind of less near the water. So that's kind of
We're all not. So Woke's probably, what do you reckon, 20 minutes north of the city though, Woke, where you live.
Yep.
And
20
then
minutes north.
Porkins is another 20 minutes north of that. And then
by
I'm
the city, we mean CBD.
the Perth CBD, yeah.
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
I'm
central.
another like 20
still
minutes
all in the
probably ish
suburbs,
north of
yeah.
that. Yeah.
we're all in
All right,
suburbs.
I'm looking up your addresses right now.
Yeah, right.
Doxed.
Social
Um,
security number.
But yeah,
I was just looking
but
where Perth was
if
on the
you-
continent.
if you go any country driving, or like if you go to the country, there's kangaroos there.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I'm sorry, by the country, I
They're-
mean
they're
not
prevalent.
CBD.
Or on any golf course.
Oh, golf courses.
Wow.
I love golf courses. Yeah,
Okay.
golf course, kangaroos everywhere.
One of the
So
few
yeah, it
good
sounds like
shots in
they're
my
your
life.
version of our deer.
One of the few
So
good
you
shots
guys
in my
are
life. I hit it
Western,
from like
okay.
80 meters out, straight onto the green. Got there. There was about 15 kangaroos sitting on the green, and there was a
Oh,
few
jeez.
little joeys. And I was like, I'm just gonna
Oh.
mulligan. That was a great putt, and kept going to the next hole.
No,
Hell no, I'm not betting that hole.
known to be
But-
like violent.
No,
Maybe
so the kangaroos that we have that are in the CBD,
Yeah.
no one gets messed up by kangaroos. in the
Nah.
CBD.
Okay.
But you wouldn't
Okay.
want to walk in through a pack of them when there were a few joeys and to get your golf ball.
Yeah.
That's probably
Sure,
as long as
yeah.
you're like smart,
No.
but they're not coming
Yeah.
up.
They're
That's for
just
sure.
the reason that people get
They
messed
move
up
away
is
from you. They're more scared of you.
they're more scared of you, but they have very very powerful legs. Obviously, they're known for like hopping around.
Right.
So they-
I was
Well, they have
wondering,
claws,
I'm having the
too.
image
And they
in
have
my head.
they've got like
Movies.
relatively big claws. So they just lean back and like boot you, and like it's not that bad, but it will do like heaps of damage to people.
You'll get
Gotcha.
massive internal bleeding if
Yeah.
it comes to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're in a bad way.
Oh,
Gotcha.
sorry, Altara.
But the likeliness of that happening without you antagonizing them is
yeah, it's really low.
0%.
Way less
basically.
than dying to bears, so we win.
What would you
Or-
say the ratio is of tourists who get attacked by kangaroos as opposed to like Australian citizens?
I don't know if I
Yeah.
ever hear of a kangaroo attack
No,
on a
never.
yearly basis. Do you?
Never.
No.
Like I've seen one
Okay.
or two ever.
Yeah.
No, see, but it happens rural. It happens rural because that's
And then
where the-
occasionally a video on YouTube where you see some drunk guy getting in a boxing fight with a kangaroo.
That's what I'm wondering.
Right.
Is like,
That's
do
what I'm
tourists
thinking.
do that and get attacked?
Yeah,
But
but like, yeah, have you seen that video where that kangaroo
Yeah.
was gonna mess that dog up? Like,
Yeah.
that dog was not getting
Yeah.
away from that situation alive.
And this dude
Unless
just
that
comes
guy-
and like punches it.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
instances of domestication of kangaroos? People
Yeah.
have kangaroos
yeah.
as pets?
Not,
I don't
not
think-
Successful.
Or is it like here if you have a chimpanzee as a pet? It's just like why really?
Yeah.
No, not
Maybe.
like that. It kind of gets like they get.
No,
they're
no one would have a
wild
pet.
animal.
No one would have a kangaroo pet though.
No, but
That's what I'm saying.
Joey's. Joey,
you
100%.
see them
Oh,
getting
yeah.
nursed back to health
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot.
But they're wild
But
animals. They
Okay.
wouldn't be
You
domesticated.
never have a,
But
Not
they're
have
not.
a
a proper 6-foot
Yeah.
kangaroo in
Okay,
your
okay.
backyard.
I don't feel like it would
That's
be
what-
rewarding. They would just like eat your grass and
Sure,
like never come to you.
Yeah.
so Fresh, you said kangaroo meat is delicious. Do they have like kangaroo farms? Or
gee.
Is
I
that
mean,
mostly
People
just
eat
like
actually,
kangaroos?
hunting?
Did I miss that
You
part?
know what?
There is.
So I've hunted kangaroo before. It's actually really sad hunting them because they're a bit dumb. They're just like you shine the light on them, they just stand there until you shoot them. So I don't like hunting
I
them.
mean,
anymore.
it's the same thing with deer. So
Yeah, but deer's probably like are less domesticated, maybe, so they run away. But I assume there's kangaroo farms. I know that people were making a huge case for increasing the amount of kangaroo farms because they're really so cattle farms are like really bad for the agriculture because of like their hooves and everything. But we have heaps of cattle farms, and a lot of people are saying we should increase the kangaroo farms, which are really good for the agriculture, and then and eat kangaroos more than we eat beef. But I think a lot of people don't like kangaroo meat. Do you guys like kangaroo meat, Porkins and Woke?
Kangaroo
There's a-
meat is like really healthy, isn't it?
It's
So-
it's
so
really
it's not-
lean, but
Yeah,
the
so
thing
not
is
very
that like
fatty, so
yeah, it's really
yeah.
lean, but it's like got a really high I want to say iron or like magnesium content or something like that. I can't remember what it was. Some sort of metal. It has a really high content in their meat.
Okay.
And it's like
I think it's probably iron.
that
Makes sense.
it's probably iron, yeah. So it's good. It's really lean, so it's really healthy. But there's no way you could eat kangaroo like you eat beef
Right. And live
without
and
eventually
and you
making
have
yourself
to-
sick.
You have to cook it
Okay.
like really rare
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well. Otherwise it gets really
Really?
like too chewy.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
So it's like
Yeah.
nearly bleeding kind of.
yeah. Like
This
like
is just
well,
more
rare
like
is good.
Yeah, but kangaroos also in Australia, kangaroos are classified as a pest
Mm.
Because we have so many.
Yeah,
So
because
they,
there's
Really?
especially
Yeah.
in like
they do cullings
really
and
rural
stuff.
Mm.
regions. They're like
So many of them.
huge thousands and thousands strong herds of kangaroo.
There's more kangaroos than people, I'm pretty
Jeez.
sure. Yeah, I think that there's more kangaroos than people in Australia. I've heard
Wow.
that. I'm sticking by it. I don't know.
Those
Yeah.
are the
the
moral
internet
facts.
told
The
me.
internet told me how many kangaroos there are.
But yeah, they're not like really dangerous,
That's
at all.
scary.
and they're very cute.
There you
There's
go.
Very
so
natural.
many things that are going to kill you, but they're probably not one.
Nah, yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, we win.
Unless they jump out in front of your car,
Mhm.
you get in a car accident before it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're bulky. You can really
That is by far the most dangerous
Mm.
way that you come across a kangaroo.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So
yeah.
so just like Googling and taking top results. Close to 50 million kangaroos,
In Australia.
which is double the
More than
population
double
of
our
the humans in Australia. Like what?
Oh my god.
That's crazy that we
There's a
don't
lot
see
of deer
them.
here, but not that many.
But you know why it is? It's
Yeah,
because we have
that's-
that giant spot in the middle of Australia
Yeah.
where nobody lives because
Nobody
we just
lives,
we don't
yeah.
have anything there. So there's be so many kangaroos there. And camels, wild camels. We have a lot of wild camels.
So if you wanted an argument for
Wow.
legalizing guns in Australia, kangaroo culling is
Taking
probably
out the
the main one.
kangaroos.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the kind of people that
Uh,
hunt them, I guess, have
interesting.
guns.
Is there any other topics that you guys want to talk about, or
I feel like we should start wrapping
questions?
up unless we got any pointed
Yeah.
questions.
No, I'm
Did-
ready.
I think
to-
I'm okay.
were there
Yeah.
any viewer questions in the Discord, Fresh?
Oh yeah, I did. So let's go quickly viewer questions. So we had
Mhm.
so Just Nick said, how's the economy in Australia? I feel like we can quickly answer that by saying we're doing a lot better than a lot of places in the world. And then Vibe said, 2 questions. Do you think that prisons rehabilitate people back into society, or do they force an otherwise poor choice into a system that brings the worst out in people? Do you want me to
I
read that
think
again?
that there's some things that I think that we are too hard on, like the punishments are too severe. But I definitely think that there are certain crimes that require a complete removal from society.
Mm.
Yeah,
In
Um,
Australia or just in general?
just in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think what were you saying?
No,
No,
yeah,
you-
that's it. That's
Oh,
my
okay.
point of view.
I think that is another question that kind of relates to the whole privatization of prisons thing and the incentive to lock people up is like there's no real incentive for the people who are in charge of these inmates to rehabilitate them other than
Mm-mm.
the goodness of their hearts, because there's more money to be made if you can put more people in prison. So unfortunately, I think in America there's more of a focus on punishment as opposed to rehabilitation. And
Same.
also, once you get out, like it's virtually impossible to do anything. Like find a place to
that's
live,
true.
find a job, do
Yeah.
anything. So that's why the recidivism rate, in part, is so high.
The first thing you do when you try to apply for a job is we'll get a police clearance.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
So if
pretty
you don't
pretty
clear it,
hard
like-
from first step.
and
Yeah.
it can
For
be
felon
a
or-
stupid mistake you made when you were like 18, 19 years old that ruins the rest of your life.
Mhm. I think on the
You'd
other
never
hand
be
too,
able
though,
to buy a
there's
gun.
also it's just it
Yeah.
could be the opposite. I mean, there's just not.
Hmm?
It's just interesting to think about how that decision is made, right, for people that are locked up, life without parole versus somebody that gets 5 years on potentially maybe the same crime, if not worse. It's just
Yeah.
it's not exactly the most organized thing, at least in my opinion, from
It's not an exact
just in the
science.
U.S.
You
my
probably
God,
have
it's just
more
like-
close to a personal experience with your mom having worked there.
Yeah,
than
and I
we
think
do.
I didn't have a lot of conversations with her about that. She mostly told me about just stories, crazy
Okay.
stories.
Yeah.
But actually, I was listening to Howard Stern on the way to work yesterday, and
What a trip.
he was he was telling he had a caller that had somebody that called into his channels, telling a story about how this gentleman's brother was murdered. He was from Newport, California, and what happened was his brother started dating this woman who was going through a divorce. And what ended up happening was that woman's, ex-husband, in process ex-husband, whatever you want to call it, hired a hitman to kill his brother. Now, the hitman who actually committed the crime gets life in prison without parole. And the ex-husband, who essentially, organized this crime,
Mm.
gets 5 years in prison.
Yeah,
So,
right.
It's
yeah.
just interesting.
And
I,
like-
I don't think
It's
that's
crazy.
we here in Australia. If that ever happens, that the crime does get, I guess, communicated back to the person who did
Yes.
that as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
that's,
it's
it
and
sounds
I
like a bit
guess
of injustice.
Mm.
apparently 100%. Apparently the first when it went to trial the first time, the husband or ex-husband, he had a mild stroke while he was on the stand. And so they declared a mistrial the first time.
Oh, wow.
The second time
jeez.
around, I guess the jury decided that 5 years was enough, or whatever,
Jeez.
however they came about that decision. But it's insane to think about like what is really going on.
Yeah.
with the justice system, but that's not exactly privatization of prisons, but it's kind
No,
of,
but
you know,
has to deal with how
relevant.
people in prisons are treated and everything.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Should
Yeah.
I
Any
get the
other
last
questions?
question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So from Vibe as well. Should Australia look to America? Oh, sorry. I should just quickly say Aussie asked, what do you think life happens? What do you think happens after death? We answered that in the previous podcast, Aussie. So look that
I
one
wasn't here, so I'm just gonna say nothing.
up. That's fine. That was what a fair few people said. So
I
should
was gonna say I haven't heard yet. I haven't heard one.
Should Australia look to America for moral guidelines as the free world, or do Western countries lack purpose in life that other countries have as a bigger part of their culture and have had for hundreds and in some cases thousands of years?
Um,
That's a big question.
Yeah, there's multiple questions in there actually, but so should we look to America for like guidelines? Was like the first part of that, right? And then the other part was, do Western countries
Lack purpose in life. So I think he's saying, yeah. Do other countries have more culture in their morals, in their spirituality?
Interesting. I don't think we should look to no offense, no offense meant here, but I don't think we should look for guidelines.
Mm.
I think that if they've experienced something that we can learn off, like for example, they've implemented a law, then it's totally fine for us, and we can see how that law played out. Then I think it's great to look to that, but not just America. I think anywhere where
Mm-hmm.
something happens that we can potentially learn from, is we should be looking at them. But I don't think we should specifically look to America for like moral guidelines, and I don't think that we do. I don't think that that's a thing that happens.
Yeah, I think it's that's like that's once again the where do we get our morals from, which we need to do a whole podcast on that. Honestly, it's a let's
Yeah.
You could do a
Let's get into
podcast series on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still not come to the answer properly.
Still not come-
Yeah.
But we
Right.
yeah, I think that like for example, like the example of what I'm saying, if America could look at like what Australia has done in terms of gun control and that kind of thing, you know, and try to at least learn from it. But I don't think that you can say that you can just defer to someone. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird question to put because I don't think anyone would agree. I don't think anyone would say yes.
Mm.
Right?
I think
Yeah.
I think Vibe is just trying to get us to say that America's better.
Right.
Huh.
I think so too. Sophisticated way.
Yeah. And does anyone have a different take on that, or should we do the second part of that?
I feel like that's pretty much my thought on it too. Is like there's nothing wrong with looking to other countries for guidance, but it shouldn't just be like it should be on a case by case basis. Like if there's something that happens that you can learn from it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that like we necessarily need to ask each other like how am I supposed to run my country?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to make sense. So
No, definitely not. And the second part of it, Fresh, what was it again?
And then do other countries have more of a like do countries that do Western countries lack a purpose in life that other countries have a bigger part of their culture have had for hundreds or thousands of years? So do we in the West lack a purpose in life? So I feel like Vibe was on our spirituality versus materialism podcast last week, and I feel like he's still in that mindset because this is like similar to what we talked about, and I was still a big fan of saying that we because our government systems are set up based on economy, and a lot of emphasis is put on economy and material wealth. We do lack a lot of spirituality and a lot of culture and a lot of philosophical thinking, I think, in the West, because we live day to day, and we've in some ways we reduce a lot of tasks and things to the purpose goes out of things because of the way that capitalism works in a way. So we got to constantly be thinking about that. And so I kind of agree that there's less, but I also think that Western countries are amazing. Like so many people, like you just looking at who wants to move to these countries, they're like great countries to live in.
Yeah, I definitely find myself missing that culture, that depth of culture, because of just the amount of time that we've existed. You know what I mean? Like when you go to like when you travel and you go to like Italy, you know, and you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of years of like buildings and culture, and just it's so much richer, and I find it super interesting. And I come to Australia and I'm like, oh, look at this building from like 50 years ago, you know, or like not 50 years ago, like 100 years ago. It's not I definitely miss that in Australia. But then obviously the yeah, I'm trying to try to get that like sense of identity and stuff from the Aboriginal culture that was living here before
Mm.
the Western culture kind of showed up. So, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
I think it's an interesting question. It's so open-ended because
Yeah.
so like do Western countries like purpose in life that other countries have? And I think it depends on how you want to take that. Do you want to think of it as a corporate body, as a country from a population point of view, or do you want to look at it from a governmental point of view? Because I think there's not too many governments that have retained any sense of culture that their history has, at least outside looking in, that doesn't mainly retain like their oppression, I guess. Like a lot of those countries that, especially through like Eastern Asia and things like that, that I guess have culture as a really central influence of their governance, have generally used it to suppress somebody and continue to do so. Um, and so it's kind of more, are we talking about like the individual people and the culture that they bring on a personal basis? And maybe we do, but I think maybe when I say we, maybe Australia does, I guess, lack some culture, but I'm not sure that really determines a lack of purpose.
I think I think that it doesn't determine a lack of purpose, but I see danger in just striving for this material wealth that we get sold, you know.
But from a, I guess that's what I'm saying, from a government point of view, if you're looking at like what controls each country, west or east, you know, they're all pretty well the same. They just use different guidelines. Like there's not too many people that are looking back at what they did 1,000 years ago and saying we should continue on this path because it did our country well back then.
Yeah, definitely. So we just got to be mindful of it, I guess. All right, I feel like we need to wrap up. We've been going a long time. Sorry, guests. That
Yeah,
we
it's been about
usually
4 hours.
don't go this long. The conversation,
so-
you have been amazing guests. That's
good
why
Yeah,
conversation.
the conversation was
very
so good.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So shall
Okay.
we go? Maybe we
Beer
can
reviews?
start. Oh yeah, I forgot about beer reviews.
I
Beer
did
review.
jump in on that
He
too about
went in.
halfway in.
He
so
jumped in. All
He
right.
jumped in.
Nice.
Awesome. Who wants to go? I'll go first.
Yep.
Just because mine is going to be pretty quick. So I feel like I'm going to take a pass on reviewing my beer, because I am incredibly hungover, and I did partake. I managed to get through one beer. I enjoyed it, but like I just know that like my sense is completely off, because I still feel like ridiculously hungover, and drinking it is like, as much as I can tell that it's like a nice beer, I still feel like kind of ill while drinking it. So I'm gonna take a pass on rating this one. It was the
Okay.
Other Side Anthem. I'll probably drink it again on another podcast, maybe
Okay.
next week. But yeah, this is what I was drinking. It's not its fault, but I didn't enjoy myself.
Not its fault.
Not its fault. All right, Roxy, do you want to go next? Interesting one.
Yeah, I'll go next. So to remind everybody, this was the Gotta Get Up to Get Down coffee milk stout, Wise Acre Brewing Company out of Memphis, Tennessee, and it is a 5% alcohol. Very, I guess I'm doing the whole shebang, right? Appearance, taste,
Yep.
drinkability.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
appearance, I would definitely give this, I guess, the highest score possible, which for us is going to be a 2 out of 2 if we're talking about it.
Mhm.
love the actual artwork on the can. That was really what drew me to the beer to start, which I don't know if that makes me simple or not, but I love it.
Yeah,
The
it's effective
actual
marketing.
it's gone now, but the actual look in glass is it's very, very dark. It pours, I mean, pretty much jet black unless you're holding it up to the light, in which there's some hints of red. And the actual head is very, very thin, just like a light tan, and it actually dissipates pretty quickly, which I didn't really love, but it was, appearance wise, 2 out of
Great.
2.
Nice.
Taste, this is a hard one because if you are not a coffee drinker, you don't like coffee, you're probably not going to like this. It is very coffee forward, and has a very like rich coffee taste. It's not coffee alone. It does have a nice like bitterness. If me personally, I like dark beers and I like coffee a lot, so I would honestly be willing to give it like an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
It's a little more bitter than other beers that I've drank, but I mean, it is very, very, very good. Just super flavorful. It's astounding that it's only 5% alcohol and it's got that much flavor. So 8 out of 10 for my taste, and then drinkability out of 8. Honestly, I'll probably have to give it like a 4, just like 50%, because I probably cannot have another one today. If I do, it might have to be later because that was my second one. And I can't see myself drinking like a 6-pack in a night or being able to just drink this casually. It is kind of heavier, I guess, than other stouts that I've drank before. Overall, though, kind of tying into drinkability, definitely would buy again, easily buy a 6-pack, which I heard you guys talk on the last podcast about a carton. How much is a
Oh, yeah.
carton for you guys?
Yeah, carton. So it's like 20, usually
24.
about 24 beers.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
damn.
case.
Yeah.
Do you guys
yeah,
have
like a
cartons?
case.
Yeah.
Sure.
We call them
Yeah,
cases,
but
but like 4
Case.
6-packs
4 6 packs.
come in
Yeah.
a case.
Okay, yeah.
sure. Yeah. A 6-pack is definitely more common for us, especially with a beer like this. It'll just come actually very similarly to Woke. I think your cans come with like with little tops.
Yeah.
That's more popular for us. I don't ever see these type of crafty beers coming in a carton.
We
but,
started going that way, to be honest. Those top things I was talking
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
starting to get like
very-
12 packs, but not
Yeah.
really anything bigger than that.
No, especially when it comes to some of these, like these are like
The craft ones.
these
Yeah,
craft
yeah,
beers.
definitely.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, overall,
Good. That's
I
a
can't really
14
think of
out of
anything
20.
else
That's
to
a
Yeah,
say.
solid
14 out of 20.
solid
That's
score.
pretty good.
It's really, really good.
For a
I
coffee
like it a
stout,
lot.
yeah.
So sure. Yeah.
Evets, did you want to do yours? What did you drink?
Sure. So about halfway through, I broke into this. So backstory on this cider. It's been sitting in my fridge for about 6 months now because my old roommate gave it to me, and I just didn't have any interest in drinking it. But it was something that I had in my fridge that I could drink and do a review on. So I figured, blind taste test. This is as good a time as any. So I'm drinking a Great Blake's coffee infused hard cider.
Oh, you went the coffee as well.
Nice.
That's just what was in my fridge. But I was looking to see where it's made, and I don't see that anywhere. So I don't know. Maybe I can look it up and find it later. But anyway, it's a weird cider. It's definitely on the drier side as opposed to sweet.
Okay.
And it's a very confusing flavor because it's got like the bitterness of the coffee and the bitterness of the cider, but it's not a super bitter drink like with the finish. I'm very confused by this cider is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I was gonna say as a cider and a coffee, I can't even imagine that. Like,
Yeah.
and if I can add to it, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but this is a perfect
you
hair
could.
of the dog beer.
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
had to,
yeah.
if I had
Definitely
to
with a
say,
stout.
because it is just, yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But continue. I forgot about that.
So
That's
I
good.
would say like appearance, like I'm looking at it in a cup, not like a glass. I just wanted to see what the actual color of it looked like. And I mean, it looks like I would expect a cider to look. It's nothing fancy. There's not really any head to it when it poured, and it's just like a light amber kind of color. So nothing crazy, and like the can itself is okay, but like I don't know, I'm not crazy about the artwork. I'd give it like maybe a 1. Like it meets expectations, but it's nothing above and beyond kind of thing.
Yeah.
As far as taste, like I said, it's very confusing. It doesn't taste bad, but it doesn't taste great. either. Like, this isn't necessarily something I would recommend to someone who doesn't like want to try all the coffee infused things specifically. You would really have to want to dig into this niche to really enjoy it, I think.
Sure.
So I would probably give it like a 3 or a 4 on taste. We'll say 4. I'll be generous because it's not terrible. It's just
Yeah,
like not
different.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then drinkability, like there's no way I'd be able to drink like even 3 or 4 of these
Oh,
in
wow.
like an afternoon. And it's too much in a very small can, like too much going on flavor wise for me to be able to get that much down. So drinkability, I'll probably get like a 2. Like, I'm gonna finish this one,
whew.
but I'm glad it's the only one I'm finishing.
That's a 7. A 7 out of
Yeah,
20.
that's rough.
That's a rough
Yikes.
score, mate.
Not
That's a
good.
rough score.
I won't be buying that one.
Professionals here. Professionals.
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
guys.
We know what we're talking about.
100%. We know.
Yeah. All right,
Definitely
Porkins, you're up.
I'm drinking a small ale from Colonial Brewing Company. I'm not sure what their stance is on colonization or reservations.
Colonial.
Got appearance. Can is bland. Color is strong. Good amber color. Taste. It's a good mid strength. It's probably my favorite. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 because yeah, it's not a full strength.
Yeah.
It doesn't have all the flavor,
Yeah.
but it's about as good as it gets. And drinkability. Oh, I've had 3 of these.
Oh, that's a lot of drinkability.
I could have 3
Minimum
more.
4.
But yeah, apparently I got to go to work in 5 hours. So what do we got? I could drink it from a can. I could drink it from a glass. I could drink it from a shoe. From my opinion, that's an 8 out of 8.
Yeah, that's a
that is
Perfect.
a very drinkable.
Chewy.
Did you do did you do 1 for appearance? 1 out of
Okay. We got 16 out of 20 right
That's
here.
good. 16 out of 20.
Nice.
Decent.
So, that's a strong.
That's a solid score.
Strong,
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, and the last one, I've got the Beer Farm Indian Pale Lager. I'm sorry, I keep picking green beers because they look so nice, but then the green screen stuffs them up. So I picked it because it's weird, right? Beer Farm's great beer, but IPL, Indian Pale Lager, weird. Appearance, it's pretty bland. It's green. And it does. It's very
green.
Sorry, no, the can's green.
The can's
green.
Yeah.
The appearance of it is really, really light. I was really surprised when I put it in a glass. It's like super duper light. Like it looks like a cider. It does. So because of that surprise, and it's got like I'm actually gonna give it a 0 for appearance because I don't like the can, don't love it in the glass. So I'm giving it a 0 appearance.
Cool.
Taste, I do really like these. I feel like I'm much more of an ale drinker though, especially an IPA drinker. So I don't love it, but I do really like it. I feel like if you're a lager drinker who's going a little bit heavier, going a little bit heartier, you could really get into these. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for taste, and then drinkability, very, very drinkable. Because they're not as heavy as an IPA. You could easily drink these all night. I'd buy a carton for sure. I give it a 7 out of 8 for drinkability. So
Nice.
14 out of 20. Not bad. Beer review.
Awesome.
Done.
Beer review.
Beer review.
Sorry,
Nick,
beer.
Gotta get the timer.
Yeah. We always do it so well, guys.
I actually like how we never do it.
I know. It's actually great. So I think lastly we can just ask you guys, lovely guests, to give a bit of a plug to either your channel or anything you're doing at the moment, something that you would like to say. So shall we start with the newest guest in Roxy? Where can we find you, Roxy? When do you stream? What do you do?
You can find me at twitchtv.com/FoxyRoxyLee_. Twitter, Instagram are pretty much exactly the same, FoxyRoxyLee and FoxyRoxyLeeTTV. And they are also down under my panels channel. Very, very exciting. Actually, this upcoming Friday, I'll be doing a subathon. It'll be my first one ever to celebrate a year on Twitch. I'm really excited for that.
Nice.
And so details to come. I'm going to post about that on my Twitter as well. But yeah, I try to stream. It's very off for those of you that are in, I guess, Australian time, because I'm pretty much almost a whole day behind, but pretty much evenings. is the standard for me from an Eastern and Central standpoint for time zone. So schedule's there, and I try to stick to it. If not, I post about it on social.
Sweet.
Drop me a follow. Thanks.
And Evets, are you still not?
I don't do anything on the internet. You can't find me anywhere.
Nice. Cool.
This
Porkins?
isn't even really him. It's just an illusion.
I'm not
This is
streaming.
a 3D rendering.
I'm not intending on streaming, but you
All right, so
can
we'll just
find-
keep shouting out Foxy.
You can, no, hang on.
Or for me, that's fine.
You can find me in Fresh's stream.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
number
True.
one
Yeah,
mod.
that's true.
Drop in,
That's
say
true.
hi.
Yeah.
Number
And,
one mod.
Black
Oh,
Mate,
yeah,
Coffee,
I-
He
I also
reckons.
happen to
find
be
me
guys'
in
streams.
Yep.
stream,
That's true.
but I'm not a mod there, so I won't drop in. So don't bother.
That's
Cheeky.
true. Work.
Yeah. I am obviously Mr. Woke TV. I think, do we have the banners underneath? I think we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
They're showing.
So Mr. Woke at Mr. Woke TV, but I'm Mr. Woke TV on Twitter as well, and on Instagram, as well as Twitch. I do a weekly stream schedule, so definitely follow my Twitter so that you can find out when I stream. And yeah,
you're
I'm going to
always-
be streaming after this, watching
Hey.
Fortnite World Cup.
Nice.
Yeah, cheeky.
Very nice. Well, guys, it's actually been way too much fun. We've gone so far over time because
Man,
you're so good
so-
to talk to. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming. And yeah, we'll see everyone from chat. Thank you, chat. Thank you for follows. Thank you for everything. We'll see you in the next podcast. Bye bye.
Ciao.
Bye, guys.
Bye.